Hello everyone and welcome into our latest live video. Today it is Wednesday the 18th of December 2024. My name is CareyHolzman and maybe we're broadcasting in 4K today. I don't know. I spent some time last night making changes to the capture card. We're now on the CamLink Pro from, I keep wanting to say it's Logitech. Elgato is owned by Corsair, not Logitech. Made by Elgato. It seems like it's a much lighter weight, cheaper card than the Magewell or the Blackmagic. And yesterday we were using this EVGA XR1, which is a USB single input. It'll do 4K. And it just so happens, and I don't know why, but coincidentally, Amazon has these on sale from $50 or $60 down to $29.99 today. So if you're thinking about getting yourself a capture card and you don't need multiple cameras, although you could use multiples of these, quite honestly. Yeah, the XR1 from EVGA is a nice choice for that. Doesn't quite cut it for me, but it's a great emergency backup for me. And at $29.99 at Amazon today, it's not an ad. I'm just saying, I wish that's all I paid for it. In the meantime, you guys can confirm if you're seeing 4K here. Hopefully it sounds as good. I'm trying, with the different capture card, the audio is processed by each capture card uniquely, however they process it. I've not touched the audio, so I hope nothing has changed there, but sounds like we're getting some confirmations that 4K is going out. Now we'll see if we have buffering or other issues because our bit rate is 4 times higher. Yeah, it's 4 times higher because we've got 4 times the resolution, and that could put quite a taxing on our bandwidth over the hours that I do my broadcast. Usually, if it's going to happen, it'll happen after the first hour. Most live YouTube broadcasters don't go on and on like I do. So it's a good test of the equipment. I'll put it to you that way. Today, we're going to finish up the Project Zero build, which if I don't knock the mesh point over, see any cables in there? It is super clean. Now, since the last video, I went ahead and just put all the panels and screws back in it so I didn't lose them, because I had to move other things onto the counter. But rest assured, no other work has been done. And what I have to do is put the Thermaltake, we have a 2.1-inch screen that's going to go down here. And they give us a replacement panel that has a recess in it specifically for this purpose. That replaces this panel right here. So the screen will be right over here. And then we have the Thermaltake TH240. This is the liquid cooler. And these are the two components that the marketing company shows when you go to Amazon or Newegg and you want to buy this case. They show it already set up. And I like to use those marketing photos as an ideal, aesthetically pleasing configuration. So for that reason, we're following the photo except for the GPU, but you can always add your own GPU. And that's what we're going to do today. The system's already got Windows installed. Well, we have part 1 to the video available, as well as the previous video where the motherboard was prepped, which I think was back at Studio B. Yeah, because it was in the Sama case. That Sama case was terrible. I got rid of it. And we moved this board to the Thermaltake Ceres 350MX, I think is what it's called. It's been an overall very delightful case. I like it. And that idea that you don't see any cables, it doesn't look like it's done. It's something's missing. And there's plenty of room in there, and it's a very, very attractive price on the case. Now, Thermaltake doesn't sponsor us. These videos are made possible through our memberships and super chats and Amazon gift cards that so many of our community members volunteer to us and contribute to us so that we can use that money to buy products we genuinely are interested in and not have any control or approvals required from any of the manufacturers. We don't cooperate with most. Not that we don't want to, it's just they don't want to spend money on something that isn't going to reflect them positively, and they're not going to take my word for it. They want me to record and edit and then submit the video to them for approval before I can show it to you. That's what happens when you let the company pay for it. So by the community paying for it, we have all the freedom to do whatever we want to do, to say whatever we want to say, to do it live and unedited, and that's exactly what we're doing thanks to our community. So we're going to do that today. In these last 2 boxes, this is the motherboard box that has all the spare parts from our build and documentation and stickers. And then we have this box here, which should have an alternate mesh front instead of the glass, which I'm not going to use ever. I like the glass, not the mesh. And it should have the replacement panel down here. So if you order this case, you're going to have a couple extra parts left over, which goes into the landfill probably sooner or later. And you're paying for them, right? You're paying for 2 fronts when you can only use 1 front, at least 1 at a time. And that's okay as long as you understand what you're buying and it's all built into the price. There's no a la carte. You have to get the whole combo meal here. So anyway, let me just set this down for a minute. Oh, we'll be back to that in a second. The EVGA XR1, if I go over to Amazon here, I'll show you. And this is, of course, representing Amazon in the USA. It's 40% off today. Just a very bizarre coincidence that I got an alert about that sale. And I said, wait a minute, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow anyway. That works for me. And it can save you guys a lot of money. So there's the Amazon website there with this product. Whoops, I think I clicked on something. Let's go back. The EVGA XR1 Lite capture card. It's very simple to use. You saw the quality of it yesterday. And it is a 1080, well, it says it's 1080 capture card. So I think we were getting 1440. I thought it was a 4K capture card, but maybe I read it wrong. Let me get my glasses and let me see what it says. On the back of the box here, it says interface. No? Yeah, it'll do 2160p, which is 4K at 30 frames a second. Everything else it'll do lower resolutions at 60 frames a second. That's really good. At 30 bucks for a name brand capture card, yeah, they're practically paying you to take it. Holy cow. It's a really good deal. All right, ask me how I really feel. Today's parts, again, just as a reminder, we've got the links in the video description below, but you'll see the way that the marketing company will photograph the case empty, right? This is what you're getting, and this is what it'll look like, or potentially could look like when you build it. And what we're trying to do is replicate really this look here, where we're going to use that cooler, right? And that little LCD. Now these were not available in the United States yet. And this was introduced back in October, and they're still not available in the US. So this came from Amazon Japan, which I had stumbled on by mistake looking for the little 2.1-inch LCD from Thermaltake. It came up on Amazon.com for a few dollars more, and then down below in this bottom corner it said ships from Amazon Japan. And yeah, it took a little bit longer, but not by much. That's the motherboard we're using, the MSI Z790 Project Zero. It's a beautiful board, as you can see, high performing too. It supports the 12th, 13th, and 14th gen Intel CPUs. So given there's not much difference in this generation of CPU, really from 13th to 14th to 15th, they're all pretty similar. 6 of one, half dozen of the other. We're still good to go here. The price is outrageous on that at $578.99, but hey, I'm sure you can find it cheaper elsewhere. This is not the K version, so it comes with this $50 cooler that we've got on it right now. Over here, we've got that Thermalright contact frame that we just used just because we had it. It's kind of a waste of money in my opinion. We've got the Fanxiang S880. That's the drives I've been using. I think I've got 3 dozen of those out. It looks like they're all sold out in the 2 terabyte version right now, but it'll be back in stock sooner or later. We're using the OLOy DDR5, just 32 gigs of RAM with RGB. Nothing fancy, 6400 megahertz, it's nothing to shake a stick at, but we're not running it that fast anyway. And the final tab is our EVGA 750 watt, which is something I just had laying around. So that's it, that's where we're at with the build. And we're gonna pick up from there with installing our LCD screen and liquid cooler today. And then apart from some cable management, honestly, it's all hidden in the back. No one's ever gonna see it. But I do like to do the cable management in order to make the system much easier to work on if I have to get in there to do any repairs, upgrades, modifications. Having organized cables gets me in and out quicker. Of course, if I'm not the next guy who works on it, then I just helped out I hope the next person who works on it, if it's not me, appreciates how much easier I made it for them. Could even be the owner of the computer that decides they want to do it themselves and say, oh, that wasn't too hard. But if you got to untangle a bunch of wires, yeah, it can get a little overwhelming and frustrating. Say hello to everybody in the chat. Let's see, who do we have joining us today? Charles Eslick says hello. David Graham and Luke Greenia say hello. Of course, Mara's in there, along with Craig Dowler, Jonathan, and Ron Makura. Rick Lakes joins us from Minnesota. There's Jonathan, as well as Michael Lavelle. I also see our friend Buster with a 10-pound super chat. Says, good evening, Carey and Maralina, and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is currently 42 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5.5 degrees Celsius. Dwayne Blackwelder renews membership, now a member for 25 months. And Dwayne says, hello, everyone. I've not been on a live chat in a while. I've been busy installing network cabling at 3 industrial sites, and I'm glad to finally have some time to tune in and probably let those blisters heal up, right? Because that's hard work. Thanks for renewing your membership, Dwayne, and thank you, Buster, for your continued support, your friendship, and appreciate your comments and your support. Speaking of which, Mark Gaines joining us from Northern Ireland contributes 10 pounds. He says, hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Hello, Mark. Welcome in. There's Kurt Schlegel joining us, along with Gil Garcia, Charlie Purdy, and Waddle says hello. Sasa Rus says hello. Mike Quinton, as well as Doman 2000. There, Jim Jam says hello. Charlie Purdy with a $10 super chat says happy holidays to everyone. Thank you, Charlie. Happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for your continued support, of course. Paul Connolly, the Thunder from Down Under, says hello. Welcome in, Paul. G'day. Titan says the 4K is solid. Right on. Thanks for that, Titan. Slovaka Dynamitis says hello. Tony's RC, Corey Silva, all say hello. And let's see, Thomas MacT, did I say that already? Vassos joining us says hello. And I'm catching up. We're getting to the bottom of the chat here. Maglin Thala Thala wants to know, is the all-in-one cooler any good? I'll let you know when I use one. It's still in the box. I think you might be getting a little ahead of us. Let's see. Robert Kadja joins us, says hello. And scrolling. Gene Guy Gravel. Omni Guy says hello from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Hey, buddy. Sorry, that's different side of Canada. Bonjour. Comment allez-vous? What does that mean? Not even sure. Thank you for hanging out with us. Planet Cryos with a $2 super chat. He said, it's the Bumblebee show today. We should make the Bumblebee show every day. Thank you for the $2 super chat, Planet Cryos. Richard DeFries joins us also from Ireland. I think that's pronounced Ire. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They've got Maria Angelis Capitan Brazzo. Sounds like somewhere from around Brazil, maybe. Welcome in, and I hope I got everybody. Philip Jones joining us. John Williams, 55 Sting Dude. Thomas Robinson, Computerland, says it's snowing in Alberta. Got a lot of Canadians in the house today. All right. Kevin wants to know wondering which streaming PC. The streaming PC that we've been using in Studio C is the red and black computer that we were using in Studio B, the exact same one. Eventually, we'll get Studio C built up and it'll be back on display. The PC is not really all that important. If we're gaming and streaming at the same time, you need a lot of power for that to handle that kind of resource intensity for the video game and the streaming simultaneously. But just streaming, we're using, it says 0.8% of our CPU. So 99% of our CPU is unused right now. That's how little is required for streaming. Mostly streaming is going to be on your camera, on your microphone, and on your bandwidth that you're paying for from your ISP. That's really what's going to determine any limitation on your streaming or quality. The PC itself, again, unless we're gaming and streaming and we're having the PC do those two pretty, well, one pretty intensive task, which would be the gaming, and then the other supplemental task or additional task, it's not supplemental, another additional resource requirement is then streaming. It's best to separate those, you know, stream on one computer, game on a different computer. It doesn't affect your game lag and such. But this one can easily do it, but it wouldn't matter if I even had any mini PC you've ever seen on this channel with one of these. They'll get it done. That's how little is required. But yeah, the red and black, the one that's always been used since the last time you saw the streaming PC, it's just we moved it to the floor because I can't make it hover. I have to put some kind of shelves up or something. But any PC that we've ever reviewed here in the last 5 or 6 years at least can easily do what I'm doing right now. I suppose the only difference is the capture card. We have a 4-input capture card, and if the mini PCs, well, none of the mini PCs really allow for adding an additional card. Same with laptops. In that case, you just go USB. But then that's only got 1 input instead of 4. Lately, I've only been using 2 inputs anyway. So 2 of these, one for capturing a desktop, one for capturing a camera. That's all you need. $30 a piece. I mean, it's really super inexpensive. The expensive part of streaming is really just paying your ISP for the bandwidth. That's pretty much it. All right, thank you for the questions, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Thomas wants to know, is it cheaper to buy or build a PC? Well, too bad there's no such thing as what we define as a computer. What motherboard, what processor, how much RAM, how upgradable, how repairable, support, no support. You get what you pay for. So if you want to buy a cheaper pre-built PC than one you can make, you're not buying the same thing. If you want to build a computer, then you get exactly what you want. The motherboard you want, the CPU you want, the storage you want, the capacity you want, the RAM you want, the case you want, the power supply you want, the video card if necessary you want. You have so many more options and freedoms. Focusing on the price is sort of like going into a restaurant and looking at a menu. And they say, do you want combo meal 1, combo meal 2, or combo meal 3? Or would you like to design your own meal? And your first question is, and keep in mind, none of the combo meals are the same. One's hamburger, one's chicken, one's pork, right? And then you can build your own. And you say, which one's the cheapest? What's that got to do with the food? It's either food that's cheaper to make, it's cheaper to buy, therefore they can sell it for less money, or it's food that's more expensive, where it costs them more money to buy the food and then the meal costs more. It's not that anybody's taking any more money from you. How much is a $5 bill? Now, is a $5 bill going to be cheaper than 5 $1 bills? Or would it be cheaper if I got a $10 bill? But $10 is 2 $5 bills. So you get what you pay for. And as far as I know, nobody is selling $5 or $10 bills for $5. If they were, I'd let you know. So ultimately, you get what meets your needs. And if your focus is solely on budget and you don't have any interest in building, you know, a lot of people love to build a computer. They don't necessarily need a computer. And quite often, once they've done it the first time, they want to do it again. So they'll be asking around friends and family, hey, you need a computer, I can build it for you, right? They just like to build it. If you don't want to build it, go buy yourself a pre-built. But if you want the control and you want to be able to, you know, easily upgrade it, repair it, and decide where you want your money to go in RAM or storage or processor, you definitely want to build it. But at the end of the day, you will pay for exactly what you're getting for that money, regardless either way. The world just doesn't, it's not that simple. Nobody's really out there, with the exception of scammers, the big reputable companies, Dell, HP, Acer, Asus, they're not charities. They're going to make a profit. On the other hand, whether that's a pre-built or a motherboard that you put together yourself, they're often made by the exact same companies. And when you take something and make it into pieces, so for example, if we're going to build 1,000 of these computers, we can build them cheaper because we're scaling up with all the same parts purchased in bulk, like shopping at Costco. Was that joke that guy said, you know, you walk around that Costco, they have the big thing of toilet paper, right? It's almost embarrassing to have that. It's basically taking up the space of your cart with no room for anything else. But it's so inexpensive because you're buying it in bulk. But you can stop by one of the gas stations when you're on a road trip and you can buy one roll of toilet paper. Now, which one costs you more? Well, the price per roll is cheaper for the bulk, but the bulk costs a lot more money overall when you're paying for it. And who buys one roll of toilet paper? What are you trying to do? Quit? That's a joke from, what's his name? Brian Kiley? Kiley Bryan? Funny guy. Does a lot of great little one-liners like that, so credit to him. Anyway, is buying Charmin toilet paper worth paying more than buying the cheapest store brand toilet paper? Some of you are going to say, I wouldn't touch the cheap toilet paper. And others are like, there's no difference, and people are wasting their money buying the Charmin, you know, the more expensive name brand. Nothing cracked me up more than somebody said, I went into Target to buy some paper towels, and I can't believe how much it cost me. But he was buying name brand paper towels. He wasn't buying the store brand. He went into the store, he sees the paper towels, he buys the most expensive brand name paper towels on the shelf, and then he complains about how much he paid for it. Like somebody held a gun to his head and he didn't have a choice. You could have bought the cheaper brand, my dude. So you get what you pay for. And if you see value in that, buy it. And if you don't see value in that, don't. I don't know you and I don't know your values. So at the end of the day, you've got to make the decision that meets your expectations and your budget. And hopefully you're reasonable. The more you spend, the more demanding you can be. The less you spend, the more understanding and forgiving. You've got to realize that, well, you know, I paid $300 for the computer, so you know what I mean? One time I was at one of those food trucks had pulled up at a place I worked at, a computer shop. And the food truck pulled up and we're sitting around the table. We all got some breakfast. And guy sitting across the table from me, he's eating his bacon and eggs, whatever he got. He goes, you know what? This is pretty good for $3. And I was confused. Like, to me, food is good or it's not good. It doesn't matter how much you pay. It's you like it or you don't like it. Tastes good, got the right texture. It's not slimy. It's not cold. It's not over-seasoned or under-seasoned. No. So I look at him and I'm a little confused. Like I'm eating and I stop and I look across the table. I go, so you say it's good for $3, but if you would have paid $5, you'd say it wasn't good? And then he stops eating and he thinks about it. He goes, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And I just went back to eating, and it makes no sense. You liked it or you don't like it. Now, if you're saying I got a lot of food for $3, the proportion, the portion of it is good. I get that. But if you're saying the food tastes better because it was $3 than if it were $5 or $6, I can't process. Does not compute. Anyway, everybody's values are different. And what makes sense to him didn't make sense to me. And we agreed to disagree, but I understood him a little better from that point forward, okay? So anyway, you got to pick what's right for you. Let's see. Any other questions before we get started? This should be, famous last words, this should be a relatively simple video. Adding the screen and adding the cooler shouldn't take more than about 90 minutes if I take my time. There's Mitch Morrison. I think Mitch will join us this Friday, speaking of Mitch. We have the Asus ProArt Z890 Creator Wi-Fi, and the case that this needs to go in is going to take both me and Mitch to lift it up and get it onto this counter. It's an Asus ProArt case. It's massive. No RGB, all right? This thing is going to be rocket ship fast. And if you've missed the 2 prior build videos prepping the motherboard with the ProArt liquid cooler, boy, is it something. Really nice. You get what you pay for. It all has to get put in the case along with a 1,000-watt Asus Tough Power power supply. And I think I could use Mitch's help with that. And hopefully he'll join us this Friday, which is 2 days from now. Oh my goodness, we're 1 week away from Christmas. Do you realize the next time it's Wednesday, it will be Christmas Day? And then the next Wednesday, because whatever day Christmas falls on is the same day New Year's falls on, because they're exactly 7 days apart. Every year, this is how it works, by the way. The next Wednesday will be in the new year. And 2024 will be behind us. And we can close that chapter and open the next chapter, and let's hope all the pages aren't torn out. We'll see. I can't believe how fast it's approaching. I just realized that. Friday is going to be the 20th, for crying out loud. Wow. I better enjoy this cold weather, because December 21st is the winter solstice, which means that's the last of the short days. As we move on into December 22nd and forward, the days will start getting longer as summer's coming. So I'm going to soak up and enjoy this cold desert weather for the few weeks I have left. I've gotten spoiled. I wasn't thinking about it. But now that I'm becoming self-aware of the present right now, I really like this weather we have here in Phoenix right now. Frank Jimmy wants to know if I ordered the Bumblebee case from Amazon Optimus Prime. What a bum. There he is. Thank you very much. Don't quit your day job. All right. Let's see. Closed captions should be available as well. For a long time, we weren't able to do live closed captioning, but at this point, your browsers can do that for you anyway on any website. Most browsers can do auto closed captioning regardless of the source. But here we're using YouTube's algorithmic closed captioning, which means we have to be in a regular latency mode. So in ultra low latency, we cannot go 4K. In low latency, we can't have closed captioning. And in regular latency, we can have 4K and closed captioning. For experimental sake, I decided let's go with regular latency, and we'll see if the delay is that much bigger from when I talk to when you hear me, and if it's worth it to get the 4K and the closed captions. And let me know in the feedback. Or I just wasted my time with all this, setting it all up. But so far, it appears to be working anyway. Luke Greenia says New Year's Eve will make 37 years for his wife and himself, their anniversary, or how long they've been together. Well, I think you guys picked the right ones, right? Obviously, sometimes when we pick a partner in life, we find out later that, or they find out later, didn't quite get that decision right. But 37 years is proof positive you both made the right decision, so congratulations. Barry Klein says, so they're making cases in safety yellow. Are you putting something dangerous in it? Maybe. Stay tuned. Mitch Morrison is excited. Toto is going to be touring again, so he's got his tickets. Of course he has his tickets. Roy Starman contributes $10 in Super Chat. He says, Merry Christmas, Carey, and all the regulars. Been away for a while. I guess it has been a while since we've seen you. Welcome back in, Roy Starman. Thank you for your support, your holiday greetings, and back at you, my friend. And thank you for the contribution. Waddle says the live latency says it's 24 seconds. Okay, so that's not too bad. From when I speak to when you hear me is 24 seconds. And then when you're responding to what I say in the chat room and I read it back, it's 24 more seconds. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're typing something into the chat. There is a delay between when you've typed it and when I see it and respond. So that's not overall bad. I think ultra low latency is about 4 or 5 seconds. And then I don't know what low latency is. But regular latency being under 30 seconds is pretty good. For a live 4K video worldwide broadcast, I'd say it's pretty good. Thank you for that information. I had no idea. Frankie B with a $4 super chat. Right on. Thanks to our friend Frankie B joining us from New York. Always good to see you, my friend. There's Dan Nilsson from the Netherlands and Phil Stodd joins us here along with Pro Newbie Solo says hello. And Thomas Robinson joins us as well. All right. I'm not intentionally skipping over anyone, but if I miss you, you know, sure and shout out, hey, you missed me, okay? And I'll do my best to, kind of rude to ignore people, but I'm not doing it on purpose. All right, so here we go. Continuing where we left off, just as a reminder, one of the benefits, I suppose, of kind of putting the panels back on it is you get to once again see how it all comes apart. Let's go ahead and just take this side panel off right here. It's 2 thumb screws. Real glass. And, you know, I'm always struggling to figure out where to put these panels where I'm not going to kick them or knock them over or scratch them. So let me just find a place in my man cave over here. I'll set that down. Now this panel has to be replaced for the 2.1-inch LCD. So we need to take both these panels off. And there's just 2 screws right here, thumb screws. And they do stay captive, meaning the screws don't come out, so you don't have to worry about losing them. They can come out if you really want them to, but I recommend just leaving them in so you don't have to find them later. So that piece then, you know, gives us access to the power supply for any work we have to do. And in this piece here, this looks like it's being held on with a screw there, but it's very dark in here and I can't see so good because it's a small screw and my eyes have a hard time seeing small things in a dark room. What can you do? I've lost my cat vision. We're going to just go ahead and take that screw out right there. This is one of those countersunk screws that goes right there. I'm guessing that has to come out. I'm not sure. I haven't taken this off before. Does that do it? It's not doing it. There are screws underneath. No. It looks like, oh, I see. On top, there are 2 screws. One here. Why aren't I just using my electric driver? Fair point. I don't know why. Decided to go old school today and, you know, physical labor. All right, so the 2 screws there and this one up here, which I don't know if that one had to come out. No, it looks like that one could have stayed. I'm going to put that one back in because it looks like it's going to fall right out. Just doesn't have to be tight. So I'm going to leave that one in, just take these 2 out. And then that's the panel that we replaced. They give us a spare one in the box I just had up here a second ago. Let me grab that box now. Move these out of the way. And I think I am done with showing you the XR1. So we'll set that down here. And let's see what's in here. I'm sure I've shown this on the first part of this video, but I can't remember. I've slept since then. And there you go. That's the mesh replacement panel. And this is the replacement for that. So we'll just put that in here, save it for next time. I don't know. I think that could go in a landfill, honestly, because for me personally, I would not want to use either of those parts. I think whatever part of the case price had to pay for those, I would have rather had the couple of bucks off the price of the case. But I also do like options, but I like them better when they're free. So when I put this in here now, we're going to have a hole, and that's designed to hold this optional Thermaltake 2.1-inch circle LED, which matches the design on the cooler. That's why I went with this cooler. You'll see the front of it looks exactly the same, just as it does in the photos. And then we have to use Thermaltake's proprietary software to control these screens. All right, so that's to be expected, nothing unusual there. And then this has never been opened, so everything is live and unscripted as you see it in real time. And if it all goes sideways and catches fire and burns to the ground, well, I hope I get a lot of thumbs up for that. All right, let's go back over here. Oh, I'm already on the main feed. All right, let me just open this up. We've got some, even though this shipped from Amazon Japan, the instructions are in English. Not that we're going to read them, they might as well be in Esperanto or something. And then we'll open this up, and then there's our watch dial looking, just reminds me of a giant watch. 2.1-inch round. Square screens are pretty common, the round ones kind of unique. Completely unnecessary purchase. Costs almost as much for the entire case as this screen right here costs. I'm just thinking I could put a watch band on it. Little, what is that called in Fallout? We've got plastic covering the screen, of course we do. And this is just essentially a secondary monitor that hooks up through the USB cable for power and display. That's all there is. You know, when we show the portable monitors, the 15-inch, 17-inch portable monitors, they can be powered and accept a video signal just through USB and nothing else. This is no different. It's just tinier. It's a giant screen for a hamster. Why does this have two connections on it? I was just expecting a single, cable with one connection on each end. Why do we have two? So this end is designed to plug directly into a USB 2 port on your motherboard. And then either one of these looks like, well, I'll tell you what. Let's mount this in here. So we know this I've never done it before. Give me a break. That goes in there. There's a little tab that slides in the slot. Okay, it's going to look like that. Really need to kind of hold on to that so it doesn't fall out. And then there's two screws that are in this box. That's pretty much all that's in the box. And then we're going to put this in. It's got flat sides, okay, so it's only going to go in one of two ways, either this way or this way. I got to figure out which way's up on that. So it'll look like that. I like it already. So if we take this back off and look in the back, does it say which way's up? The back looks like this. And the software, you can rotate the screen, but that's not the point. I'd like it to be in the right orientation. If it's 180 degrees difference and no difference as far as any labor or energy required, why have to sit there and rotate the screen when I can skip that step entirely by taking my time right now to just see if there's any up indicator. Otherwise, I plug it in, and then I'll see the default orientation of the screen and then rotate it. Does it say here? These are the documentation. It's just one page. it does not specifically show the screen being used in anything. It's just, here's how the screen works. It doesn't demonstrate to us which orientation the screen would go if it's used, because you could use this in different things, in different ways, from personal mods to sorry, lost my train of thought. Or you know, in other Thermaltake future case designs, this could be used in. So I think that's why they didn't specify that, because there's more than one way that can be used. That's my guess. If anything, the case instructions maybe include some direction with that. So here's what I'm going to do. When it comes to the cable, it says on this end you either use this plug or this plug. You don't use them both. So if we're going to have this oriented in here in this direction, where's the USB going to go? Okay, so the USB is going to go out. If we put this in like this, our USB plug is right here. And if we rotate the screen 180 degrees, oh, okay, well, sometimes the answer is right in front of me the whole time. In fact, when you look at the back of this, you see there's a hole cut out for the USB right there. But on the other side, that support has no hole cut out. So if we rotated this, we'd have no access to the USB. So that clearly indicates this only goes in one way, even though it will fit two different ways. It would have been nice if Thermaltake would have given us one more angle or a key or a notch, because otherwise, if you're like me, you won't realize that after you like I was ready to screw this down thinking it's just two screws. And then I thought, well, let me just check the cable. And then sure enough, the cable only passes through one side of the support. So that's just dumb luck. That's all that was. Still didn't need instructions though. Those instructions are worthless to me. Now in this bag, we have a couple of self-tapping screws. I don't know why they're self-tapping, but what that means is they kind of have a wide thread and a pointy bottom. And when you screw them in, they're going to create the thread that screws into the plastic behind the monitor. The good side of that is it's really a tight fit. They're not going to back out on their own like a machine screw might. You know, you don't need washers or anything. On the other hand, if you keep taking this in and out, you find that the threads get the screws don't get quite as tight. And if you strip the screws out, well, too bad. There it is. And then if we add our USB cable here, we can go either, again, we can go straight out with this end of the cable, or we can angle it away with this end of the cable, which I like personally. Has that L-shaped bracket to it. And then we can just shove all that right back in there. Place it back in its slot. Put a couple screws in. I mean, it's super easy. I don't know what the big deal is. And we'll just close that up. Why is that so tight? There's one. Again, these are just panel screws. Don't over tighten them. You just want them secure. I know you probably can't see much there, but it's really hard for me to try and work like this. But that's all I'm doing. Okay. 2 screws. Done. All done. And that can go over there, and that one can go over here. And then we'll just go ahead and put this on just to complete our look. What do you think? You like it? We're not done yet, but I mean, so far, I think that's pretty darn cool. Next, I got to take this cooler off. We're going to replace it with this liquid cooler, not because we need it. It's because we like the look of it. That's it. This cooler on this chip, wait a minute, this is a 14900. It came with this cooler. So this cooler was designed specifically from Intel to run on the 14900. So yes, it's more than adequate to cool our 14900. This is more than what we need, but I think it's going to go for the look we're looking for. We did not need to buy this. If we were building a computer just to build a practical computer, we could have saved about we didn't need this, we don't need this. These are purely for looks only. They're ornamental. So we remove these 3 thumb screws, and I think this whole back panel comes off. Yeah, this is all one piece, whereas the front is 2 separate pieces. This piece here is part of the rear panel. And remember, all of our cables are connected to the back of the motherboard. So that means, well, I do have some minor cable management to do. If I didn't do it, you would never know, because you're not going to see it from this side. And if we take that cable, that USB cable from the LCD screen, which I buried back here somewhere, well, that's the end. You pick one end or the other, so we don't use that. I will wire tie that, make it look pretty later, or cable tie it. And then down here, one of these is a USB, probably the one that says USB on it, right? Which is this one right here. Then all that remains is for us to load the software. Like, that install's done. Now, with regards to this cooler, it's probably best if I lay the case flat, which, I realize doesn't give you much of a view, but if you're going to do this work at home, you really want to work with gravity. And a lot of times when I'm building or upgrading or repairing, I'm doing it in a very awkward way. Because the camera's in front of me, I can't see what I'm doing. And if the camera was behind me, you'd just be looking at my back. Also, all the lighting going this way to shine inside. If I had this like towards me with a camera behind me, it gets really complicated on the lighting since I'm a big thing in the way of the light, regardless. So the best I can do is just recommend you follow the way you see me do it here, which is simply to lay the case flat. Well, I suppose we need to unplug this first. So let me unplug the CPU power and the CPU RGB. And we'll just run those back in here, because when I take the cooler off, I don't want it to be leashed to the motherboard and then end up possibly bending or breaking one of my cables, because I will reuse this cooler on a different socket 1700 build. I promise you'll see it again. I really like these coolers. Okay. Screwdriver. We'll just take this bad boy out of here. That's it. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. And then there's a back plate that goes with this cooler. Ooh, lift that bad boy up. And that back plate is this piece right here, which has sticky tape on it. I should not have stuck it to the back. But remember, this was originally going in the Sama case. Even then, I was going to put a liquid cooler in it. I don't know what I was thinking using the tape. The tape is just there to hold the back plate into position so you can get the screws in. But you don't need to do that with tape. You can just be coordinated and clever. And that tape is on there really good, by the way. That is some good, strong tape Intel's using. And this is a plastic bracket, and you can break it. So let me look at it from this angle here. Maybe get a flat blade screwdriver. What do I have in my little bag of tricks? I got a tool for everything in here. Big old flat edge screwdriver here. Can I get it up underneath the tape? Maybe. Little assistance with my finger. No, it's still too wide. I need something a little narrower. Nope, let's Torx. Perfect. Okay, let's put that in there. I want to gently work this out because I don't want to break. That did not sound good. I don't want to break the bracket. Then it'll make that cooler impossible to install without the bracket. And the sound you heard was just the snapping of plastic against the metal. And the tape is so strong, it came off what it was originally came from the factory on this bracket, and it's staying on the back of the CPU plate here. So that, obviously we're not going to reuse this. So we can just, usually you can roll it, use a fingernail and just start it. And then once you start it, as long as it hasn't been on there 3 years and it's all dry, boy, I wish I had not have stuck this on here. It did make my install easier, but still, it's making my removal much more difficult. Pros and cons. One thing's easier, one thing's harder. Pick your poison. Now, I could just potentially leave that on, but I want to make sure the back plate on this cooler sits flush. So we definitely don't want to have anything sticking out that could cause an incorrect, improper seating of the water block that's going to sit on top, or whatever next cooler is. The only time you'd leave that tape on would be if you're using a cooler that doesn't rest up against this back plate here, because this will lift it up a little bit, and that can make a difference on how well your cooler is going to work if it's not sitting completely flush. So we definitely want the tape off. Boy, that tape, boy, that's some good tape they're using. If Intel was in the tape business, boy, they would just be a league of their own. So while I'm painfully, tediously removing the sticky tape millimeter by millimeter, if you have any comments, questions, this is the time to ask me while I'm doing something some brainless activity here that's not requiring much of my attention. Our friend Buster's going to bed. It's pretty late over there in Scotland. You know, I looked up plane tickets. A round trip plane ticket, I think the cheapest was like British Airways with one stop from Phoenix to Edinburgh was just under $800. So if Mara and I went, you're looking at just over $1,500 and 15 hours travel time just to get us there and back. Then, of course, hotels, food, entertainment. It's in the future. I don't know when, but it's I feel it. Thinking like May. May would be a good time to go, wouldn't it?
Sure.
I don't know. I don't live in Scotland, but I would just think May would be a nice time of year.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I just have to say the 4K and the captioning is awesome. I love it.
You notice it?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. It's great.
Do I still look the same?
You look
More flawed?
just as amazing in person as you do on camera.
You're biased. So yeah, you can count my wrinkles easier now. Is that 3 more wrinkles since yesterday? I'm still alive, aren't I? What do you think? It's the cost of staying alive. It's more wrinkles. Wear them proudly. Earn those wrinkles. I got wrinkles coming I haven't earned yet. I got good credit. Safari says May would be a good time to go to Scotland. Not too hot, not too cold. not too busy with tourists, with kids being out of school maybe. I don't know. I know it ain't Disneyland, but families do tend to do traveling during summer vacation, summer break from school. So that's anywhere from late May usually until August or September, depending on the state they're coming from, region. School systems all vary in the United States. Here in Arizona, they tend to start school early in like May, and then they end up getting out in August. But I was in Michigan. We went to school, I want to say Memorial Day.
Okay, that was funny.
What was funny?
Frank Jimmy's comment, he says we should use Loch Ness Airways because the price of a ticket is $3.50.
$3.50. Ryanair.
No, not that one.
You're going to have to help pay for gas. They have a little collection plate. Sorry, did you want to wear shoes on the flight? That's $20 extra. No liquids are allowed, but you can buy a drink on your 15-hour flight. It's not included in the price. Did you want to have the oxygen mask drop down? That's an extra $15 on Ryan. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. I've never been on Ryanair, but oh boy, does it have a reputation. It's the Spirit Airlines of Europe, I guess. Okay, I got a bunch of sticky tape that I want to just throw away before it gets all over everything. I'm going to step away for just a moment. I will get a trash can back here once I have room for it. But that was not an expected part of this removal. I was not planning for that. But you know, while I'm away, I can also grab a paper towel so I can wipe the existing thermal compound off the CPU. Anytime that you're going to change your cooler, you definitely don't want to repurpose or reuse thermal compound. It's cheap. If we're putting the exact same cooler on the exact same CPU, then we can leave it alone. If it looks good, leave it alone. But just to do the initial cleanup, a paper towel, and we just wipe that down. Now, because this is all fresh thermal compound, it should wipe right off easy. And it does. When it comes to polishing it, then we'll use our 97% isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol. But just to get the bulk of it, don't waste your Q-tips and rubbing alcohol at the beginning, because that's going to go through, it's really doing it the hard way. So that cleans that up, and we're going to clean up the bottom of the CPU cooler so it'll be ready for us to reuse, and we'll just use our own thermal compound. It's not rocket science. Well, I appreciate the pre-applied thermal compound on these coolers. It's not a make it or break it one way or the other. And as you can see, it cleans up really nice when it's still moist and it hasn't been sitting on there for years. But either way, I would still use a paper towel. And then I would not clean this with isopropyl alcohol until I was ready to use it, because it's just going to sit and collect dust and other environmental debris, meaning I'll have to just clean it again. So there's no point in doing it now, but you do want to clean it for the best thermal efficacy. Is that the word? In reality, it probably doesn't make more than a degree or two of difference if the thermal compound is on a super clean surface or not. But if it takes an ounce of effort to just get it a little teeny tiny bit better, I say the importance should be on doing it right, regardless of what impact that has. It's just a matter of having the pride of knowing that you cared enough to put in that little extra bit of attention to detail. And you're the only one who's really going to know that. But a lot of things we do, well, a lot of things I do, customers have no idea. They don't know that they just avoided a virus or a computer crash because I preemptively prevented it. They'll never know. And if I try and tell them, they don't believe me a lot of time. Well, sure you did. You know, where's your proof? Okay, well, did it crash? No. Well, was that just luck? Could have been. So unless I can go back in time and say, well, I won't do it. Let's see what happens. And those kind of customers, I can do without them. If they don't believe what I'm doing for them, they'll be back. Give it time. And they'll say, oh, I guess you were doing something. It might take a while for that to occur. But it always happens. And rather than argue with somebody or try and convince them to agree with me, if they don't see my value, it's not really my problem. I got other things to do for people that do see my value. And why do people see my value? Because I pay attention to the little details. And while they may not know specifically why the machines I build are far more reliable and don't have the problems from other people they know telling them stories, I'll tell you this is the secret. Those details. And they're not difficult. It wasn't difficult for me to take the tape off. It's not difficult for me to reapply thermal compound. And in the end of it all, it may not make that big of a difference. But if you do a bunch of tiny things, and each of those tiny things makes a little tiny difference, then you combine them all together into your final build, from your operating system config to your hardware config, your cable management, your thermal application. Suddenly, those little tiny things add up into something pretty tangible and noticeable. And a lot of times, because it's a lot of little things, people can't quite put their finger on why they see a difference or have a different experience, a more positive experience with a machine I build versus a machine they bought pre-built or that somebody else built. Generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but the proof is the fact that I've been in business as long as I have. If I was full of it, well, then how has my business succeeded? Just dumb luck? So, there's a lot of people that are strongly opinionated who will boldly make claims online that have never worked with me and have determined that the quality of my work is not up to their standards. But I don't know who they are. They have no real name they're using. They have no background that we can verify. And it looks like they're just sitting at home with nothing better to do than stir a pot to get attention, because that's how lonely they are. That's frustrating, right? Because if you're lonely, all you have to do is come into our chat room and say hello. Just be a nice person. That's far more rewarding than getting a reaction out of someone temporarily, only to be blocked or banned. When you come in here and you just say hello during our live chats or live videos, when we have our chat room open here, which is always during live video, you'll make real friendships here. And all you have to do, instead of being nasty, all you have to do is come in and say hello. It's much easier. And watch what happens when you do that. You'll be surprised at the friendships you'll make here in this community, where we're all like-minded individuals all over the world. And you might even find out the person you're connecting with in the chat room you never would have imagined you would have connected with, and maybe lives right down the street from you the whole time. Anyway, people going to do what they're going to do. Haters going to hate, but that's just stupid, because there's no reward that's sustainable in that methodology, and you're really just hurting yourself when you do that. It's like you're drinking poison every day thinking it's going to affect somebody else like me. How does that work? I don't know. Anyway, enough of Grandpa Carey's. Is it Grandpa Carey now? No, I think we're still Uncle Carey, but sometimes Uncle Carey kind of sounds like Grandpa Carey, but that's okay. Just get off my lawn. And that shirt cost me a nickel back in my day. It's so new that tape hasn't even been cut. How often do we get dead on arrival parts? You tell me. This is all live, unscripted, unrehearsed. You're watching live unboxings and live installations. If you're worried about dead on arrival parts, I think you're still living in the past. But maybe you like it there. Everybody there knows you. But I'll tell you this. It's pretty rare. The number of parts that I order is probably way more parts every year that I order than you do, by far. Go back and look at as many live videos and live unboxings where we cut the tape where a product didn't work. Find one. None come to mind. I'm sure we got at least one in the last 12 months. And there's some products I've ordered that were used or returned items to Amazon. And there's a little risk there, but I always make sure I order from Amazon warehouse, so I have 30-day free returns if anything is not on the up and up. But if it's a brand new product, it's never been returned, how many times has anything arrived bad? Even the CPUs I ordered from eBay, the AMD CPU that I needed, because Zen and Zen Plus AMD Ryzens are not Windows 11 compatible. So those machines I only built 5 years ago, they're already obsolete as far as AMD is concerned. The Intels that are there are Windows 11 compatible. Only the AMD systems are not. That means the original Threadripper build needed a 2000 series instead of a 1000 series Threadripper. The 1000 series Threadrippers are not Windows 11 compatible and never will be. They don't make those chips anymore, so I had to go on eBay, buy one used. We did that, both of those upgrades during our members only videos, just swapping out a CPU. Easy peasy. Both were returns or used products. I believe both of them were purchased from eBay. I always pay attention that the seller is in the United States. It's not shipping from China. I always make sure the seller has a lot of feedback that's positive. And the reason I don't want it from China is it's going to take too long to arrive and it might be counterfeit. The odds of counterfeit are much higher, and my ability to return it is significantly reduced. Like the cost effectiveness of returning it probably doesn't make any sense. So anyway, those are the rules I use, and even those products, used products, have not been DOA. And when I've gone on eBay and I bought a couple of machines that were sold as non-working for parts only, they required almost no repair in both cases. They just weren't hooked up correctly. So that's been my experience, and I've shared that with you live and unscripted every time. But I do my homework, usually. You can tell when I don't do my homework. When you see me getting frustrated at something, usually a case, the lack of cable management or parts fitment issues, I did not do my homework. And I learn slowly, but I get there. The point of sharing this live and unscripted is that you learn right with me at the same time. It's not a polished and edited commercial. This is reality. This is community. Thank you for being a part of it. Okay, enough of that sentimental crap. On top, we've got some documentation. Just put that right there. Oh, good, a pillow. RGB fan. I told you guys I had fans. I don't know why no one believes me. Proof. I have fans on YouTube. I don't care what anybody says. This is our radiator and water block. And this is a whole lot of cabling for something. Finally, we just have the egg crate carton, silica gel. Call this desiccant. Silica gel. Throw away. Doesn't specify how far. Let me try. It says throw away. Throw. I guess that's what the instructions said to do, so I don't know how that helps. Okay, I guess I've been watching too much football. Now the reason for this cooler is that the same manufacturer makes that screen. See what I'm saying? What are you looking at? Oh, those aren't eyes. So this will go up here. And I think it's a really unique look. And so yeah, probably cost me $200 extra, you know, maybe $250 for this and that. About $250. Completely unnecessary, but required. These are, oh, these fans don't have any cables. These fans are going to click together like those Leon Lee fans. That's why so many cables in here. I mean, I don't know why they just don't pre-attach them, quite frankly, but what do I know? Let's see. Oh, they're magnetized. Hello. That's pretty cool. See what I did there? Fans, cooling. It's pretty cool. Okay. The problem is this is my day job. In order to see the RGB on these fans, I want you to keep this in mind. Wherever this side of the fan faces, this is where you're going to see the RGB most prominently. If we put the fans in this way, you've got all this stuff in the way of the RGB, and the light is actually shining out that way. So when we're mounting this to the radiator, we're not doing it for the best airflow. We're doing it for the best aesthetically pleasing look, which is why we bought the liquid cooler to begin with. As I previously mentioned, the cooler we had on there was functionally practical and fine. This is not practical. This is over the top. And as much as nobody needs a Corvette, okay, if you can afford it and you want that and you think it's fun and that's how you want to spend your hard-earned money, don't let me get in your way. Nothing wrong with that. If you're piecing together things because money is tight, don't waste your money on this stuff. You don't need it. Or do. It's your money. I'm not your mother. All right. I might be a mother, but I'm not your mother. It's a little tip from your Uncle Carey. Oh, good. Another USB cable. Hey, look, a bracket with tape on it. Where have I seen that before? They're not the same. Don't think, oh, that's the same as the other. It's not. There's going to be differences in the thickness. I mean, we'd have to get a micrometer out, but trust me, it matters. And it's not worth experimenting with unless you're willing to pay the ultimate price of killing your CPU. So it's not like we got to reuse a part from something else and cobble it together like we're at a junkyard trying to piece together something. This is all brand new stuff. And we've got another one of those, clearly for a different CPU. Those look awfully identical, don't they? I think there's a very slight difference. One is probably socket 1700 and one is probably socket 1200 and prior, like 115X and 1200. In fact, this is a great way to show you how little of a difference those two sockets have, but that there are two different mounting kits, because that little tiny difference, it matters. See here how this, I don't have it straight, but essentially if we straighten it out, one is just slightly bigger. And you'll know because only one of these is going to fit in the holes around your CPU on your motherboard. So you don't have to guess. Like, it's going to fit or it's not going to fit. But they're so similar. And I'm sure the documentation will tell us which is which. It may even be etched onto the cooler itself. If I get my glasses, I can seize. Yeah, this one says 115X. And that's for, I'm going to translate that. That's going to be for your older Intel chips, all the way from, say, 6th gen maybe? 115X, all the way up to 11th gen. Yeah. And then 12, 13, 14 would use this socket. This should also be compatible with the 1851 current socket of the 800 series motherboards, the 890, the Z890, and that should also be the same. So we're not going to use that on this build. This bracket is usually, this bracket right here is typically something that goes around the pump. I don't know if it matters which side goes up or down. I guess whatever looks best. And you see where the hoses come out? See how there's two little... One side is open and the other sides are closed. The opposite side of open goes against the hoses here. We don't need no stinking instructions. And that'll just... You know, I don't know why they just don't do this at the factory, to be honest. And there goes my bag of parts. It's a tight fit. Come on now. But it should seat all the way flush against the edge. So let me just bring this down so I don't work at such an awkward angle. Sorry, I got it backwards. Other way around. I'm such a silly goat. All right, let me move this back out. So where the hoses are, we want to keep that area free and clear of this metal bracket. Not the way I had it. It should be common sense. But I was overthinking it. And almost all manufacturers apply the bracket in the same way if it comes with a bracket like this. One of the ways you can tell is just where the groove is. So the fact that there is a groove here and around, but there's no groove on this side, means that there's no piece of metal that slides into the groove, and that's why that side is open. Now, you know, I've done a pretty good job putting it on there, but it is just a friction fit, but I'm struggling a little bit to pop that back off. It is a tight fit, and that's why you don't want to use any brute force. If things, and I didn't, by the way, if I had, I could have sat that sucker a little bit further in, and then this, as difficult as it is now, would be even more difficult then. So let me pop this bad boy back off of here. Ugh. Sometimes it helps to have the right tool, get a little leverage, and possibly do this without gouging anything. And because this kind of clamps in, kind of spread out the edges a little bit, pull it as you push it, pull the sides as you push it forward, and it should pop out. If you use tools like this, you can gouge into your plastic, which is, you know, the opposite of why we're putting it in, which is for the aesthetic look. And you could damage your hoses or your connections. This is all sealed at the factory. And since I'm not having much luck with that screwdriver, I'm going to go back to what I was doing with just taking it off the same way I put it on here. And we got hung up on something, but it's not. It's just gripping, right? It's got kung fu grip. There it goes. One side, then the other side. And then it'll pull right off of there. One side, other side. One side, other side. One side, other side. Let's flip that bad boy around and do it. We'll call it the right way. And we'll slide that in the groove here. Now it should go easily in and snap right in. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. It's so much easier when you do it the right way. I sometimes like to work the hard way. There's a masochist in me that seems to enjoy that sort of thing. But it's also good to give you a demonstration of what happens if you were to try to install it the other way around. That. You're welcome. See? There's no mistakes. There's only, well, happy little mistakes with happy little trees and happy little brackets. Happy little viewers. All right, now we're pushing it. David Graham with a $5 super chat says, imagine just plugging in the power supply to the case, and if the case had all the connections built in, then you just plug in the motherboard. Well, but if you did that, you'd be in an ecosystem called Apple. If you like the freedom to buy a cooler from one company, a graphics card from another, RAM from another company, and a power supply and a case from two different companies, a motherboard from yet another company, and a CPU from another company, somebody's going to be paying licensing or royalties to someone else. And while companies like to collect royalties, they don't like to pay them. They're not giving this stuff out for free. They're not going to have a form factor or a connector that they're giving to the community. They have to form a committee and they have to fight for what they think is better with what their competitors think is better. And this consortium then defines what standards are for things like USB and PCIe. All of that is decided by committee. And the minute you start having a committee, well, you know the expression of too many cooks in the kitchen. It can take a lot of time for a decision to get made. Everybody thinks their way is better. Everybody wants to be the standard. So usually what happens is the committee, in order to play fair, will take a little bit of the ideas from each company, or if there's significant improvement where other companies would remove the, if their other companies, comparatively speaking, have a cable or a connection standard that would cost more in manufacturing, or may not have the future growth opportunity as the others, they'll blend together the ones that make the most sense so that nobody can take credit for it. And it becomes USB, right? EU being universal, and there's no royalties. If a company says it's our connector and we design it however we want, now you're in the world of Apple when it comes to their Thunder, what was their connection called? Lightning. They have Thunder and Lightning. Intel is Thunderbolt. Apple is Lightning. And you got to pay Apple money to use the Lightning connector, and you got to pay Intel money to use the Thunderbolt connector. And you don't have to pay anybody any money, or if whatever the consortium gets for USB, which is teeny tiny, almost nothing by comparison. So be careful what you wish for, because the minute we start putting committees and bureaucracies in it, it limits what the manufacturers can do. So the manufacturer of a liquid cooler may have to abide by certain connections, which limits the options that they want to put on their cooler that no one else offers, and now they can't offer it. And it limits innovation. So the whole concept of building, for me, is the fun of it. And the minute you start making everything that easy and mindless, you might as well not build it. Like, it's no longer a challenge. It's just put the square peg in the square hole. You know, then it'll be time for me to retire and find something challenging. So be careful what you wish for. I think exactly the way we're doing it's fine. And it certainly gives products more value to certain people who appreciate, like I like the unified front panel connectors, but it doesn't make or break a deal for me. I know how to put connectors on. If I'm putting on one or I'm putting on four, they all go on the same. Anyway, just my thoughts on that. But when it comes to putting the cooler in, we want to replicate what we see on that marketing photo for this case on Amazon, which shows the cooler up here with the light shining down. These front fans have the light shining out that way. And in this screen and this screen are going to be controlled with the Thermaltake software. And so in order for that to happen, there's probably a USB cable, yeah, right here that goes to this block. That's what powers the screen, the same as that screen. And that's going to probably plug into what I'm guessing is a fan controller in this bag that fell. Now this bracket here, and I see why the bracket wasn't attached now. This bracket here is for AMD, I'm guessing. This looks like an Intel bracket. And if they installed it at the factory, you'd have to pick one bracket. Or, you know, you may have to take a bracket off to put the other bracket on. So they don't install any of the brackets. That's a different mounting way than our technique. A lot of water block or cooler manufacturers all have the same connector, and it changes on the side where it locks down. Instead of on the top, it'll change on the bottom. But this is how they prevent from suing each other for stealing each other's ideas. You've got to make, I think, at least a 20% difference in design of the patent, or pay a royalty, or get sued. Acetec, company that really created the standard water block, water pump, sued a lot of companies that were not paying for basically stealing their technology. You can Google that if you want to learn more about it. We've got some motherboard, we've got some standoffs, and the bag is labeled. It says you can use these standoffs on Intel sockets 115X, 1200, which is the same, and 1700. And we're using 1700 today. So we need these. These are the thumb screws that are going to hold the bracket, this bracket down onto the bracket we install here. And it also includes these little AMD, the little square holes in them. I'll bring it up to the camera, I'll show you. But they're choosing kind of an older style AMD lockdown, or less frequently used these days. So these things with the square holes, those are for AMD. We're not using those because that's not an AMD system. Now, if you want to hold on to these parts in case you want to change the motherboard in the future, it still may not fit on AMD, but maybe AMD stays with the sockets for a long time. Normally, I'd say it's probably safe to throw out whatever screws you're not using. Because it's a one-size-fits-all cooler, it works with many different Intel chips, many different AMD chips, and likely whatever you've got is what you're going to stick with. And if you're changing it, you're probably going to change the cooler too, negating the purpose for holding on to screws you don't need, but you do you. In here, these are the screws that are required to fix the fans to the radiator and the radiator to the case. Sometimes you can affix the fans to the radiator to the case if you sandwich, like let's say, for example, we were to put this radiator up front. We could put the fans on one side and the radiator on the other and bolt them together just with the fan screws and not need the radiator screws. So since they don't know how you're going to install it, you may have extra screws left over. We won't, because we're going to secure the fans to one end under here and secure the radiator from the other end with the really shallow screws. And it takes 8 screws on each side. We have a total of 16 screws, 8 short ones and 8 long ones that have to go through the length of these fans. Finally, well, not finally, we have another set of standoffs here, and this is for socket 2011. So socket 2011 would be your Xeon and your Core X processors, your high-end workstations, which this seems like a little bit underpowered for that. And I will never use these. I think in the history of this channel, we've seen 3 Intel chips of that level. What's nice is the CPU socket on those high-end 2000 series sockets from Intel. They have a big bracket here with holes, so you don't need to put a bracket like this on it. It's already built into the motherboard, so all you do is screw the standoffs down and put the block on. It's the easiest install ever. We're not using that. And then finally, this is we have 2 different fan controller wires for the fans. And I'm guessing the reason they do that is there's no rule that says you have to connect these 2 fans together. Well, it's definitely magnetic. I'm not using that. Okay, so if, say, for example, I want to put one fan up here on the top and one fan back here, then I'm going to need to power them if they're not connected together. I need to power them separately. Right? That's just magnetic, and it just goes right on the end, just like the Lian Li. Click. Lian Li, you have to like lock it into, there's like a tab and a hole. Nothing. This just fits right on there. That's all there is. Or we could have it go that way. Well, no, the magnet is pushing me away, so it only goes on that way, and it won't go on this side. I mean, it does attach, but it's not making a connection to it. It'll attach to nothing. Look at that. So in any event, the reason you're getting 2 cables is because you have 2 fans. But if one fan powers and it provides RGB to the other fan, we have an extra cable, and that's why. Now this cable has got an ARGB header that goes to your motherboard or to a fan controller. It's got power that's going to provide power to both fans. And then finally, it's got a male ARGB to connect that to another ARGB header, which, because this is a screen controlled by USB, this one we won't use, but we can chain this together like Christmas lights. You can string them along. But that's just a little dust cover to keep the pins from being bent or gouging, poking you. Okay? Okay. Is that right? Is that right? All right, now when we put this in, if we want it to look like the photo, which is what I want to do, then let's bring the photo back up. Where is it? That is not it, Carey. There it is. Okay, let's take a look at the photo. Look at it together. So forget the graphics card for right now. Let's just focus on the orientation of the cooler. See the direction of the fans? You see how the fans are going to push air out the top, right? And that's so you can see that RGB. Do you see, it says the TT is upside down. That helps you decide the orientation of the fans. Also, look at what side the hoses come down. They're going to come down the front of the case. And then they come around. Now, usually the hoses on most coolers face the RAM, but for whatever reason on this marketing photo, they decided this looks better. So if we go over the RAM, then it kind of covers the RAM up, and that's likely why the marketing company did it this way. And since they think of that kind of stuff, whatever they think is most aesthetically pleasing to their marketplace, that's also going to be the same for my marketplace, and probably for me as an individual. So they've already given us a cheat sheet by showing you the ideal way that their professional marketing people think this can look at its best. They want to show you the case in the best light using the company's products as much as possible, which is why we bought these products. We didn't buy them because they were cheap. We did not buy them because they were particularly best in class. They might be. They might be cheap. I don't know. Compared to what? We bought it because we want to replicate that look. Now, granted, we're using different RAM. They've got their own Thermaltake brand RAM in here. And if we want to keep it a Thermaltake build, remember, Thermaltake's not paying for this. And as far as I'm concerned, RAM is RAM. And I think our RGB RAM looks better. But I'm not just blindly following the same motherboard or video card. I'm looking for the overall look. But for that overall look, what makes this unique is the cooler and that screen down here, along with the case itself. Everything else is kind of the same from my perspective. I don't think a customer would notice one RGB RAM from another, but they will notice this case, they will notice that screen, they will notice that screen, and they will notice these lights. And if this hose, these hoses, if they block the path of anything, they'll notice it, but they may not make a big deal about it. They don't know generally one way or the other. So it's all very subconscious here, and they've done all that work for us, so kind of cheat sheet, if you will. So when we come back over here to camera one, we want to orient the fans in just the way we saw, okay? So if the radiator is going to go up, and we got to imagine this, it's going to go up this way, okay? Right? It's going to go up here. And that means these fans are going to go on like this. And then they say Thermaltake on both sides, so it's hard to know if we want the fans on this way or do we want the fans on this way. Now, does it really make a difference? Well, it does, only because the wire that powers the fan only goes on one side. It's only going to go on this side, okay? So the reason this makes a difference is when these fans are mounted in this orientation, do we want the additional cables that power these fans to come out from the left side, which is going to be towards the back of the case, or do we flip these around this way and run the power cable near the hoses where perhaps maybe we run all the cables together? Knowing that, let's take another look at the marketing photo. See if we can catch that detail. I see a cable going up here, so it looks to me that the marketing folks, well, I don't know, that may be the USB cable coming out of the cooler. Let me see, is that on the left upper side? No, it's on, yeah, it's on the left and it goes, maybe I need to brighten my image here. It should be right about here. Boy, it's so dark. It looks like there's a cutout in the case for a cable to run right in this corner. And there is, but there's one on the other side too. Huh, decisions. I don't know that it really matters that much, other than trying to replicate. Okay, that cable is a CPU power cable right there. I think there's a cable right there going to these fans. I don't know. Can anybody in the chat room see it? I don't see anything on this side. But if it were on this side, they hit it really well. In which case, I should use that side. This is going to be a pain in the butt if we put them on backwards. I'm just saying, one way or the other. Did they give us any other photos there? Maybe if we look at the white one, we can see the cables better. Oh, they took it at such an angle. You can't see where the connector is on the fan housing on the left or the right. But I do see a small cable right there, but that may be going to that rear fan right there. Or it's going to these fans on the left. Now the instructions may have a recommendation, but essentially it really doesn't matter. It's really about what's going to look best. And I'm trying to determine that from a picture rather than doing it and then doing it the other way and deciding in real life, having done all the work, which way I prefer. That's really the long way around. But that's what I'm trying to do here, is I'm trying to find out prior to beginning. And it probably is like, makes very little actual difference that only I'm going to notice. But again, it's those little details. It's a black cable on a black motherboard tray. It's likely going to be very difficult to see regardless. Plus it's way up top. But if our fans are going to blow out, it's not ideal to have this screen. It's okay, but essentially you're going to be filtering exhaust air. Who cares if you're, that doesn't make any sense. If I can take the screen out and just leave the plastic in, but I think the screen is permanently attached. So in other words, this filter, you have to clean the whole thing. It's held on with magnets. If there was one thing they should have included in this case, rather than a different front panel, I would have appreciated a top that doesn't have a filter on it for exhaust air. It creates some back pressure, which is not ideal. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's definitely not optimal. We might be able to scrape this off, but we'll never be able to put it back on again, not without a hot melt glue gun. That's kind of a bummer. So I found something about this case I don't like. So we're going to trap air and dust right up here for no reason. It's exhaust air. We want to filter the air going in. We care about filtering air going out. Heck, yeah, it is what it is. But we do have to take this off anyway to get the radiator mounted, and we can't mount the radiator until we mount the fans, and we can't mount the fans until we decide which direction we want the cable coming out of. And that's where we are right now. Now, as I've just spun myself around in a circle, we got our thermal compound. Let's take a little break here, see what you guys have to say in the chat room before I'm gonna chew on which way I want to do this here. I'm thinking this way. Let me know your thoughts. I'm also concerned, you see where that cable connects to these fans? In this orientation, is the cable going to be closer to the back of the motherboard tray? Because in this orientation, the cable is going to be closer to the front of the glass where we can see it. So with that in mind, on the other hand, the cable comes out away from the motherboard tray, and in this orientation, the cable goes towards the motherboard tray, which might hide it better. Oh boy, decisions. Do you want the left Twix or the right Twix? Carey, they're the same thing. Either way, you've got pros and cons. It cools no differently. It's which one looks more pleasing to the eye. I can't make up my mind. There's no clear answer here. There's no wrong answer. Charlie Purdy contributed earlier a $10 super chat. Sorry, Charlie, I just saw that. Hey says happy holidays to everyone. Thanks, Charlie. Luke Greeny has said, I had to cut the filter material out on the MSI Project Zero build. They've glued the filter on. You can leave it on. It's just a bit restrictive for no good reason. And it looks like it may be glued on in many places. Like I'm seeing these little circles here. Let me see something. I think. Is that glued underneath? Yeah, so everywhere there's these little circles, it's glued. That helps keep the screen completely flat. So to cut this out, well, that's more work than I want to do. It's not critical, it's just stupid. It would be nice if that was a magnetic filter. What you doing?
Trying to look towards me.
Haven't done anything yet.
I know, on purpose.
And you're going to do a vertical shot, not a horizontal shot?
Yes, because I'm going to cut you out.
Well, story of my life.
Oh wait, that's good. I'll leave that in. Nice. Can you see me? Because I can see you.
I hope you can't see me. I was trying to be a peeping Tom. It's not working, is it? Peeping Carey.
Peeping Carey.
Phil Stott said putting the Venturis on top would be nice. Call Xenos. I don't know what that has to do with a Bumblebee, but okay. Old Man 55 said, too many answers makes my brain hurts. I know what you mean. I get it. Charlie Purdy thinks we should put that cable connection towards the motherboard, except that the cables will be coming out towards us, and we have to flip them around, which is kind of ugly. Nick Gaffrey says, I love the quality of this build. It's yellow is not my color, but black, I'd be happy. If black is so common. The peasants want black. No, everybody's got their color choices. I've never built a yellow computer before. I didn't buy it because I liked it for its color. Let me rephrase. I liked it because it was different, not because the color was particularly appealing because I have affinity for that color. It's just that the color was unique and unlike any other color of case I've built before. And it's not ugly to me, but I build black cases all the time. I mean, yawn fest. But you'll see, when you go to the Amazon website here, that they offer this case. If we go back over to the screen capture, what are there, 6 colors I think this is in? Let's see. We've got black, bubble pink, there you go, Bumblebee, hydrangea blue, matcha green, racing green, and of course, snow. So that's 7 colors. White and black, if you're going to resell it, will be the most desirable. You'll have the most offers from interested parties. Same with cars, white and black. I think white is the most popular color of car in the United States. And if you buy a color of car like racing green, the number of buyers interested in that will be significantly reduced, likely reducing the car's value. Even if it's a rare color, just not many people want to drive around in, say, a bubble pink car. But somebody does. Okay, with that, I'll get back over to the chat. LJ says he likes them all. Old Man 55 says that yellow screams, steal me. Do me a favor and get it out of here. It'll be one less. See how long it takes me to notice it's missing. Racing Weirdo says British Racing Green looks good. See? Everybody's got their favorites and somebody else thinks is not so good. One man's trash, another man's treasure, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, etc., etc. Dave in St. Louis says, happy holidays, everyone. He's installing Windows, and thank you for the discount code. Right on, Dave. Glad we could save you some money. Let's see. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Mark Gaines mentions his browser has not crashed so far this stream. Yeah, well, now that you said it out loud. Ryan wants to know, do you think eventually the fundamental way of building a PC will change? Perhaps a new standard? Let me go to my crystal ball. Oh, this doesn't look good for you in 10 years. Oh, wait. Sorry, that ball doesn't work. The evolution of the technology is beyond our ability to comprehend before it happens. Nobody in the 1950s could have imagined, even in the most science fiction novels and movies, that we would have a world of communication in our pocket, let alone a calculator we could carry around. And the thought of this never even occurred to them. It never would have been an idea in their head that there be such a thing as a World Wide Web or internet, and how you would even explain that. In such the same way, as we go each step forward, the next step forward is still in the dark. And while we can sort of predict where the next couple of steps are, beyond that we cannot see. And this kind of speculation is a complete waste of time that accomplishes nothing because it has no impact on the world around us. So therefore, if we just base it off history, it will always continue to evolve, and the evolution will appear a much more, a bigger step in between decades. Okay, so if we're comparing how we built a computer in 1990 to how we built a computer in 2000, that was different. And it was even more different in 2010 compared to 1990, and 2020 compared to 1990. There's no such thing as a liquid cooler in 1990, not for a home user. And, you know, the processors and multiple cores, none of that existed. Wi-Fi didn't exist. The internet in and of itself didn't really exist for consumers. It was mostly a studying tool for colleges and government agencies that were sharing information, and it wasn't a graphical user interface. You had to know DOS commands or telnet commands, and you gopher commands. You had to learn how to type usually, and you had to have some education, technical education and math education to use a computer. Now you point at the pretty picture and click on it. We never saw that in 1990. Never saw that coming. Multitasking, doing more than one thing at a time? Great idea, but how is that practical on a DOS-based screen? You could do it, but it was even more complex. So as we dumb things down, likely the future that I think is coming is that these kind of machines will only be used in offices. Nobody will have these in their homes outside of enthusiasts and hobbyists that still use perhaps ham radios, CB radios. There's still people that use them, maybe some truckers, but overall the technology's changed. Ham radio was exciting because you could talk to somebody far away, and you could adjust your antennas and your amplifier and your gain. You can do that with the click of the mouse and get so much more. Millions of choices instead of maybe dozens. And sometimes people can even use their ham radios to communicate with astronauts on the International Space Station. That's pretty neat, but you can also use the internet for that. Anyway, where's it going? Don't know. It'll go. And what it'll be is what it'll be. I have no idea. And I don't have any say in it, just along for the ride. I have no idea where this ride is going. Forward. As long as we're going forward, we're good. All right, let's see what else. Chris Garrett says he can't tell the difference between 4K and 1080. Yeah, I have a hard time telling a difference too. I'm also not 14 years old. And, you know, I don't have the eyes of a younger man. That's not to say everybody of my age would agree, right? Some people's eyes are better than others. Some people notice details other people don't see. Some people wonder where their glasses are and they've been on their head the whole time. All I'm saying is there might be a $20 cup of coffee and a $3 cup of coffee. I don't like coffee. And I don't like a $20 cup of coffee any less than a $3 cup of coffee. But there's people that'll pay that because they appreciate it. So it's not for me. Okay, so if you're referring to our 4K broadcast that you're not noticing any difference, then I appreciate the feedback. Overall, what do you guys think? Should we keep it in 4K? Is this going well? Is this preferred in any way, shape, or form? Or is it such an insignificant upgrade we should just go back to 1080? Let me know your thoughts in the chat room and we'll get a consensus. Now, as I'm sitting here looking at this, waiting on your responses, still trying to imagine what orientation. I always have a hard time with this because it's upside down and backwards when we lay it this way, right? We have to flip it right side up, and then the front is the back and the back is the front compared to, yeah. So this is, I'm not good at visualizations. This is why I like to see photos and pictures and videos. That's the kind of learner I am. Reading about it and imagining it, seeing it in my head, well, I overthink things and it turns out in reality it's nowhere near as complicated as I interpreted. So that's why I like to do things in real time, unedited, with mistakes and misunderstandings built in. For anybody who thinks like I do or even partially can understand where my misunderstanding was or what the logic was and the reasoning was, that we're not just being robots ritualizing an installation, but we're using critical thinking methods in order to understand why it goes a certain direction, whether that's for efficiency, for lack of room to put it anywhere else, or it's for looks, aesthetics, or even cable management purposes. We consider all of this. It's not just do what the instructions say. Sometimes it can be that way, but the idea behind a PC is, you know, you get to build it. You don't have to build it to my standard. You build it to your standard. When I'm building for customers, I got to build to what they expect. But I'm not building this for you, right? So I'm building it based on my values, but it's not the only way. You could do it a whole different way. And at the end of the day, it's still going to cool essentially the same. You might like the looks of yours better than the looks of mine. Okay? Or vice versa. Makes no difference in my world. It's not going to pay my bills at the end of the month, how you feel. The important thing is you understand why I'm doing it, so that if you don't agree and you think there's a better way, great. You're deciding on your own and you're not asking me which is a better way. Only you can answer what the better way is. And I can explain to you the reasoning behind why I think it's a better way, but you may not agree with it. And unless you're my customer, your approval is unnecessary. It's the education, the reasoning that I'm trying to put out there for people to understand so you can make your own decisions instead of blindly following along like a soldier. Now, if we turn this around, and I try and imagine what this is going to look like if we put it up here. Well, heck, let's see. If we were to put that up here, and those cables came out there, I think the cables should go out this side. I think it's because they're already moving in that direction. I think they're just not going to be seen. Besides the hoses are right there. I think that's our direction. I feel pretty confident about that, and I might change my mind. Because, again, I'm not good at visualizing. I really need to put it together and see it. And that's just the way my brain works or doesn't work. However you see it. Some people, if I show you a coin, that's not a very good example. Maybe I got a shiny coin. I have such a selection of pennies. Ah, here's a shiny penny. Okay, let me give you a live example of what I'm referring to here. Let me go back over to my main feed. Let me step around on my boxes. Let me step up here. In the chat room, tell me what you see. I guarantee you all don't see the same thing, and I'm going to prove that right now. What am I showing you? And by the way, probably none of your answers are wrong. You're all just looking at it from a different perspective. What is this? This is a live experiment to prove a point. There'll be different answers that'll all be correct, all based on a point of perspective. Charlie Purdy says the 4K looks good. Old Man 55 says I use a 4K 50-inch QLED TV. Okay, but does it look better in 4K than it did in 1080? Thomas Robinson said he sees Abraham Lincoln. Tony's RC said he saw a nickel. A nickel of what? Nickel metal. Al J, I don't know why I want to call him AJ. Al J says he sees a coin. David Graham says he sees a penny. Fred Vandermeulen says he sees Abraham Lincoln. Fast Alpha says Abraham Lincoln. Nick Caffrey says it's an American money coin. Wayne Ellison says it's a Lincoln head. Old Man 55 says it's a year 2020 D mint stamped penny. Gil Garcia says it's a coin. Mark Leibowitz said the item Carey held up is an American coin that used to be able to buy candy with. Matt Shendon says he sees Liberty. Barry Klein says, I see a coin that when there are two of them, I find to be more than the value of most people's opinion. Phil Stodd said he sees an aluminum coin wrapped in a copper jacket. Well, he's a technical person. It's zinc, isn't it? It's not aluminum. Isn't it zinc? I don't know the metallurgy. There's a word. Robert Jones says he sees copper. The point is, none of you, except for the nickel, none of you were wrong, despite your attempts at being funny. None of you were wrong. You maybe saw the front side of a coin or the front side of a penny. You may have seen a form of currency. You may have seen a photograph of a silhouette of a former president. You may have seen a metal disc. You might have seen... There's so many words. And how we choose to see is a choice. Make no mistake. And that choice is yours and yours alone. I can't tell you how to see something. I can only share with you how I see it, in the hopes that we can agree on what we're looking at so we can move forward from that point. So as long as we're able to communicate, that's the whole point of communication. It isn't that you agree with me. I don't care if you agree with me. I care that you understand me. Because in education, understanding is the point of it. But if we can't agree on what we're seeing, we're never going to get to any understanding for education. And it's going to make it very frustrating for both of us. It's not that one of us is right and one of us is wrong. It's a question of whether or not we're able to see it in the way that the presenter is intending for it to be seen, rather than having it misconstrued, taken out of context, or completely just going over your head. But that's always a choice on behalf of the people listening versus the person presenting. The person presenting has the choice to ask the audience from time to time, Do you understand? Or are we confirming where we're at so far before we go forward? Otherwise, going forward, if people aren't with you, you're going to go forward with fewer people. And by the time you get to your end of your presentation, you might be at your destination alone, which defeated the whole point of the presentation. So perspective is a major, major part of how we go through life. It's how we choose to look at things. And no matter how you see something, just asking yourself, is there another way to see this, could provide you with another consideration of whatever it is you're trying to solve or accomplish. If you simply change the way you look at it, then it might change your approach, and that might make everything so much easier. Maybe. And I think it's worth consideration. But without accusing anybody who disagrees or sees it differently, they have a right to do that. And somewhere we hopefully can compromise and meet somewhere in the middle, that we find some common ground so that we can move on from there. Because if we can't move on from there, we're stuck. We're in a checkmate. And then we stop progressing. So I think having this cable go towards the back of the case, I think that's the way I want it to look. But I just don't know until I execute that idea in reality. Now, either way, it's not going to be wrong. It's just whether it's wrong for me. I'm always asking myself, could this be better? Could I have done it better? I'm not suggesting that you should think that way, because it's a perfectionist mentality and there's no such thing as perfect, but I always try to achieve it. People watching go, that's his idea of close to perfect. I hate to see what happens when he does something half-assed. I hear you. Why are we not lining up? I may not be able to put it on this side. It looks like we're right up against the hose, and it may be preventing the screw from going in. It's close. When I'm looking at, and you probably can't see it with the keyboard there, what I'm looking at here is that the edge of the fan is flush with the edge of the radiator, and as it moves this way, it's tilting towards me. And that's because the pressure of this connector is up against a fill valve for the liquid that's already in there, and this hose, this first hose. So for that reason, we have to put an exorbitant amount of pressure to tilt this into these connections. So now it's no longer a decision of choice. And that the manufacturer would have just given us another millimeter, maybe 2 millimeters at most, 1.5 millimeters. That's all we needed. But because the manufacturer decided to have their manufacturing so precise, which again, it's going to reduce cost overall with a millimeter and a half less of material, and making that the radiator a little bit longer, and you're making 10,000 of these, it's going to add to the price. As a result, we don't really have any choice. All the hemming and hawing I've done is for nothing. Now, even if the instructions said to put it in this way, I still want to know why. Now I know why. In fact, because we've done this live together, now you know why too. So there it is. I've always talked and emphasized the importance of doing versus talking. Like, you can talk about what if and I could. Tomorrow I'm gonna. Well, just more doing. At the end of the day, hold on, putting the fans on upside down because I'm not paying attention. At the end of the day, we all talk more than we do. And we can speculate, and that speculation is just squandering our time. I mean, a little bit of it's fine, but if you're at some point either do something or don't. The proof is in the pudding. Walk the walk, if you will. And then you can speak with confidence over your experience instead of confidence over your imagination or conjecture that you've read online, including videos you've watched. These are not a replacement for your own personal experience. They just don't have that value. As much as I can explain pain to you, there's different kinds of pain. And if I tell you that something hurts me, you can only imagine what that is. There's no way for me to actually convey the level or rating that's at the same scale that you use, or the kind of pain that I'm feeling. You understand what I'm saying? Like, there's no AI and there's no computer that, as far as I'm concerned, can ever do that. It's just beyond forever the capabilities of what we can do as humans. And feeling and tasting and smelling, all of that has to be done by people. If it's done by machine, it'll be very limited. It doesn't have the infinite range of these things, including experience, balance, any sort of senses. So you can rest assured that your future is safe with AI. AI is great for cold mathematical calculations and science. It does not replace humans. There are AI bots you can chat with, I guess, if you're lonely. And that can be mentally healthy for people that are alone. But it's definitely not a person. And you know that. You can, no matter how convincing the AI is, you still know. You can tell. Now, that's not to say AI can't fool you. It can fool you momentarily. But the more you get to know it, the more you'll start seeing through it and realize we still have a long way to go. It's like being worried about a future so far ahead that it's a little bit early now to be worrying about it. Unless, of course, you're in the industry and you're a decision maker. These screws, I want to make sure they're not too tight. They feel awfully loose to me. But any tighter and they start crushing the little anti-vibration rubber grommet in here. So that's good enough. It's tight enough. And then we can flip this, so we'll take the lid back off. What I say is going to take 90 minutes. And you believed me. Huh. Should know better. All right, let's, without knocking all my screws loose, let me grab my electric again. This is a little bit tricky because it's heavy, and we definitely want to hold on to it until one screw is placed in each opposite corner. Then we can let it go. Otherwise, it'll bend off of the weight of one screw, and the weight of it will hang and it'll break, or it'll bend it, and I mean bend the radiator and the top of the case. So find out, you know, what works for you here for your coordination. And let's start one screw, I guess. I don't know, should I move it back or should I move it forward? Feels too forward. I think I need to move it back a little bit here. Maybe about there. One corner. Okay, I still need to hold on to this until I get a screw started. It doesn't have to be tightened, but it has to be in there enough that it'll hold the weight so I don't have to do it anymore. Where is it? Not straight. Still not straight. Okay, that's better. I'm just gonna back that off. Just a little bit. Okay. Now, there's slots, ow. There's slots on the top that these screws will slide back and forth, but they're not infinite. They have little supports that separate this into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different slots on top here, which if I tilt this forward, I can show you. And what we need to do is just kind of visually figure out where we want the cooler to be. I felt like at the most forward slot, we were getting too close to these fans. And the hoses do kind of distract from the RGB a bit. And when we get the water block installed, it's going to go with the hoses down. And it's going to look more or less just like it did in the photo. So the RAM is not going over, the hoses are not going over the RAM and the RGB that we have in it. If there was no RGB on it, who cares? But I've left it loose enough that I can, you know, have a little adjustment here to determine where I prefer it. It doesn't matter where we put it as far as how it works. It's all about the personal preference of the aesthetic. On the subject of AI, wait a minute, we have a couple gift cards that have come in. Our friend Charlie Purdy sends us an Amazon gift card for, wow, $100. Very generous. Thank you so much, Charlie. You the man. We need a new man since that position has unfortunately become available. Well, the reason it became available, but I think Charlie Purdy's the new man. Wait, he's got competition. Mark Gaines also contributes a $100 Amazon gift card. You're the men. We gotta come up with it. I need some original stuff here. I think that catches us up. You guys rock. Thank you so much. There was something I saw the other day. It's so stupid. I decided I want to share it with you. Because when something is this dumb, look, if you have children at home or grandchildren, this might be fun. Let me find it. I need to use my phone to do this. Where is it? Now there's a number of these examples, and this is just one of them. Some of them require an app. This one works right through the phone without an app, and it's called AI Santa. This is so dumb. Again, for kids, this is probably magical. You don't have to go to the mall and sit on Santa's lap. You can have a private one-to-one chat with Santa. The chats, I think, are limited to 5 minutes, and they're free. And there's an article about this on Tom's Hardware. A shockingly real AI Santa is free to use and will put mall Santas everywhere out of jobs. That's the title of the Tom's Hardware article. And it's santa.tavis.io. And when we visit there, we get this screen. Let me just walk over to the camera. Oh, around my minefield. Here's Santa saying hello. And we can talk to Santa. And we have to use the camera and mic on the phone. Join call with Santa. We got to tell it I'm not a robot because we don't want any robots talking to robots. That's how Skynet happened. Please try again in a few minutes. We'll hit try again. Not a robot. Santa is super busy right now, so it can only handle so much on the servers. It's like trying to dial through to a radio station, but it's really popular right now. Maybe because I'm making a video worldwide and you guys are already doing this. But you're essentially going to have a FaceTime call with AI Santa. You could tell it's AI, okay? But he'll repeat back what you said. Like, Santa, I'd like a new computer. Oh, having a new computer sounds wonderful, right? Just that kind of thing. After a while, you'll start realizing the robotic nature of him, but he's going to cut the call off after 5 minutes so people can't tie it up all day and can't try and find flaws in it. And it's not going to let me in. Try again. Oh, great. I got to figure out what traffic lights look like. Well, thank goodness that was there. Then it tells me he's busy now. Well, that's just rude. Pick out the stairs. Okay, now I'm going to pick out the stairs. Are we done? Try again. So I go through all these steps. Now it wants me to pick out traffic lights. Okay, are we done? The least you can let me do is talk to him. So now we've got Santa.
Hey, it's Santa. What's on your wish list? Let's see if you've been naughty or nice.
Hi, Santa.
Ah, hello there. It's nice to meet you. What brings you to visit me today?
I want free stuff.
Ah, free stuff, you say. What kind of things are you looking for? And what have you done to deserve some gifts this year?
Well, I haven't hurt anybody.
That's not exactly the right attitude. I'm trying to figure out if you've been nice or naughty this year. Can you tell me something good you've done?
No.
It seems like you're not very interested in sharing anything positive. That's not very nice. Try to think of something good you've done for someone else.
Well, I helped an old lady cross the street, and there was a house that was on fire filled with orphans that I rescued, and then I went to the dog pound and adopted all the dogs, and then I took a bunch of food to the food shelter. Does that count?
Wow, that's amazing. Helping an old lady, rescuing orphans from a fire, adopting all the dogs from the pound, and taking food to the shelter. You're definitely on the nice list now. I'm impressed. Keep up the good work.
Okay, can I have a turbo encapsulator with reverse polarity neutron file deflector?
Ah, a turbo encapsulator with reverse polarity neutron file deflector. That's a pretty unusual request. I'm not sure if that's something I can bring you. But I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
You've definitely been...
How about a new computer?
You seem like a pretty cool... Ah, a new computer. That's a great idea. I think I can arrange that. You've been very good this year, and you deserve a nice gift. What kind of computer are you looking for? A laptop or a desktop?
I want a desktop.
Ah, take your... a desktop it is. I'll make sure it's a powerful one. With all the latest features, maybe even a few extra goodies. You deserve it. You've been very good this year. And I'm glad we had a chance to chat. Now, I have to get back to the North Pole. Lots of work to do before Christmas.
Thank you, AI Santa.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. I'm glad I could make your Christmas a little brighter. Don't forget to leave out some milk and cookies for me on Christmas Eve. And don't worry. I won't tell anyone you've been talking to an AI Santa. It'll be our little secret. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. It was great chatting with you. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. And don't forget, I'll be keeping an eye on you. Ho, ho, ho. Take care.
That's a little creepy.
Oh?
All right, and then you just hang it up. It's silly. Silly. But sometimes silly can be fun. We'll see if we can put a link to that in the video notes if Mara hasn't already done it. And just based off of a Tom's Hardware article that I read. Bajin guy said he's going to keep that for his granddaughter who's coming there later. Right on. Yeah, it's got to be fun for kids. All right. Especially the Jewish kids. Ask me how I know. All right, let's go back to how do we want to do that? So pushing it back too far this way kind of interferes. You know what? Let me look at the photo one more time online. I want to see where they position the radiator, just to give me a clue, a hint. Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. I'm going to look at the white case again here and see where is that radiator positioned. The hoses are pretty close to those front fans, but it's also kind of close to the rear fan. Yeah, so what I think I'm going to do after looking at the photo here is I think the best way forward may be to just go ahead and push this as far to the front as I can get on the second to last slot here. And I think that's my final answer. Yeah, that looks pretty close to what they've done on the marketing photo. As soon as I can figure out where to put the screw, that'll make my life a lot easier. We just want to start these screws. Don't tighten them down because we may have to shift this forward and back just for all 8 screws to align properly with the holes. It varies from radiator to radiator and case to case. So just to be sure, if we have any adjustments, a little nudging back or forth, we keep the screws loose. And that makes it so much easier to adjust without having to go back and tighten and loosen and tighten and loosen. So we just get them started. Now, technically, you don't need all 8 screws, but if you've got them, what else are you going to do with them? So might as well put them in. And then with regards, yeah, we'll go that far, right there, and just start tightening it down. Oh, now my clutch is working again on me. Screwdriver can't decide if it wants the clutch to engage or not. Check these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Now we can leave this top off of it if we want this to breathe freely, but the restriction on this filter isn't that big of a deal. And it's easy enough if we feel like we want to check. And I would encourage you to do this. Actually run the computer with whatever heat test you want to put it through, Cinebench, whatever, Prime 95, with this and without this, and see if it makes any noticeable difference in your cooling. I suspect it probably isn't, but I don't know, right? And your experience may be very different from my own depending on the room and the environment you're in. Now the back plate, this is the double-sided sticky tape that we're back to here. This says very closely on the bottom, if I bring it up close, you can see it says EVGA 1700. Now again, the documentation is there for you to refer to. If you've been doing this for 30 years or longer like I have, I'm not going to, if I see you reading documentation, I'm just going to shake my head. But if you're a beginner, that's what the documentation's there for. No shame in reading it. Unless you call yourself my peer. Then I'm going to judge you. But that's okay. That's just me being me. All right, we got our film removed here, and we're going to fix this one. Now, this one I plan on keeping on there. And we could have fit that first before removing the tape, just to make sure we had the right one. But look, it's socket 1700, okay? It better fit. But yeah, you could just put that, hold it up there, make sure the holes line up if you're not certain before you take the tape off, because you saw how difficult it was for me to get the other tape off. Of course, that was Intel and this is Thermaltake, and it's definitely different tape. That tape is almost like a cellophane, and the Intel tape was like a foam. one's much thicker than the other one. With that bracket on, the rest of the work here is really, really easy. All we have to do at this point is attach the standoffs here, these right here. Yeah, this says LGA 1700 along with 1200 and 115X. Now these are not resealable bags, but why would they be? That's the thing. It doesn't bother me if you're going to use everything in the bag, but if they give you extras, they should always give you a resealable bag, right? I'm referring to past videos, not necessarily on what we're doing right now. And we're just going to put these in with the short end going in towards the motherboard. And that's going to screw into that plastic bracket we just stuck on with tape. And that's a support structure for the water block to secure down to with the proper amount of pressure and complete flatness as possible, so both mating surfaces are 100% flat. And so I'm just putting these little thumb screws in. You don't use any pliers or anything like that. Just use your fingers, tighten them down as tight as you can get them with your fingers, and don't go any further than that. It's not necessary. Don't leave them loose. And if you do grab pliers, you could be crushing your motherboard and you're going to scour the metal on these. You're going to scrape it up. And you're going to have little metal shavings in your computer that, you know, the computer's allergic to those. And it's unsightly. Is that enough reasons? And even when these are in, they wiggle forward and backward. Now, do you know why they do that? They're not, no matter how much I tighten them, that back plate is still going to move. And the reason it's doing that is because when we put the cooler down and we tighten the thumb screws, it's going to pull the back plate towards the cooler and it's going to compress together. That's why it's kept loose. It's not how it tightens. It's going to tighten with these. These just secure the bracket. Yeah, that bracket, even with the tape on it, the corners, they move a good 2-3 millimeters. It's quite a lot of play. That's normal. And again, we're going to use the thumb screws on the top of the water block to pull that back plate forward and tie the or pressure the water pump towards the back plate while pulling the back plate towards the water pump. And it's going to create a sandwich of pressure. And the meat of that sandwich is your CPU. And that pressure is what's going to give us the best thermal transfer of heat onto the base or the block, the surface of the block. Now, in this bag, we have those thumb screws. They have little springs on them. And again, that's to apply the proper amount of pressure. You just can't replace these with any springs. They have to be of that amount of pressure or pretty darn close. So don't lose them. Sometimes these come off. These look like Thermaltake has attached them pretty well. These little brackets we previously discussed are for an AMD CPU if you were using this to cool an AMD CPU, which we are not. So we can get rid of those and get them out of our way. This bracket right here, this one says it's for socket 115X. Oh, so again, this is going to be, well, let me just Google which Intel chips. Wake up, keyboard. Which Intel socket 115X? So that why it's an X is because it could be socket 1151, 1150, 1155, 1156. The 115 is the same on across those four, but the last digit changes. The X represents a variable of whatever the last digit could be, since they're all compatible with regards to the socket. And when we're talking about CPUs, that covers, let's see what it says. It's going to cover Intel's Kaby Lake and Skylake, and Coffee Lake. What does that mean? It means you could have DDR3, DDR4, Socket 1151 came after socket 1150. The lower their number usually is the older. So 1150 is where it all started. And that would have been what we call socket H3, Haswell. So the Intel Haswell processors. Then they went to socket 1151, and that was for KB Lake and Sky Lake, I think. Socket 1155 was Ivy Bridge and Sandy Bridge. 1156 would have been North, so the 1150 kicks off with what CPUs? Just want a number. And the website is being very slow. Here it goes. 5th generation, 4th generation. Intel chips. 3rd and 4th generation Intel chips. And then you'll go probably 5 and 6, maybe 7, 8 and 9, 10 and 11, or socket 1700, socket 1200. Socket 1700 is generations 12, 13, 14. Socket 1851 is current with the Ultraline or 15th gen. Clear as mud. Yeah. Do you know your nerd history? Rick Ash says, what's with the 0? Project 0 refers to 0 cables. There's no cables on the front of that motherboard. So every cable, every motherboard connector is on the back instead of on the front. And obviously we're going to do our best to hide these cables. We're going to rush those out the back. We're going to also, you're going to see these hoses, but technically hoses aren't cables. What's up?
Wow. Every once in a while, I hear this really loud fan noise.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess this capture card's working too well.
Perhaps.
Now, I do have some really nice sound equipment, but I got to get the video done. Like get the 4K lighting and color and focus and all that. Now I feel like that was pretty well working.
Oh,
sound is next.
This broadcast is perfect. That sound with the fan, it's not consistent. It kind of happens sort of intermittently. I mean, it's not terrible. It's just weird. Like,
I have audio equipment that if I can take the time to actually get it set up and configured, would probably improve the audio and remove that. I just haven't gotten there yet.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But we do have the equipment. I just haven't implemented it.
Perfect.
It's looking good?
It's perfect, yes.
Yeah, I see 0.0% of drop frames. Yeah. That means we're broadcasting at 30,000 kilobits per second, which is about 4 times more than normal. And it's been happy. We're at 30 frames per second at 4K resolution, 3160 by 2160 by 3840.
Correct.
The other way around.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Well, appreciate the feedback.
Of course.
It is almost 4 o'clock, and I still have a water block to put on. So there's no other components. Sometimes there'll be little standoffs or something that sit between the thumb screw and the base of the water block. So this part here, this is for older Intel chips. That'll go with the AMD mounting stuff. We don't need it. That's why it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. Really puts the all in the all-in-one. Get it? You don't have to worry about buying the wrong cooler. unless you're dealing with something really, really old or really, really new. Now, as I lay this down, I want to just seat this on top of the CPU and see if it looks like we need anything additional. Oh no, that's all we need. So it's a relatively easy installation of this block, and Thermaltake did a good job with that. Now there is plastic that's covering and protecting the polished surface of the bottom of the water block. We're going to leave that on here while I clean the surface of the CPU with some nice high percentage alcohol, like 97%, whatever the highest is you can get. The purer the alcohol, the fewer the impurities, and it just makes for a better transfer. If I don't clean it, if I just wiped it with a paper towel, it's still going to work. It's just, well, we're in here, why don't we just do it right? Even if the benefits of that are nearly immeasurable, it doesn't hurt to do it right. To be thorough, even when thoroughness is not required for practicality, but it's required because I want to provide the best service possible to my customers. And again, all these little things, they add up together. It's not just one thing we're doing. It's across the whole build. When we pay attention to that level of detail, we end up overall with just a better machine. And by better, I mean faster, cooler, quieter, and longer lasting. It's hard to quantify unless we build two identical machines, and one we just throw together haphazardly, and the other one we pay attention to the detail. Over time, one is going to seem slower and be more problematic statistically than the other one. Statistically. You know what? This box, I don't know what I was thinking when I put this box down here for the cooler. It really needs to go somewhere over there. Oh, sorry. She'll be fine. All right, let's see. Isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol. Right here, got it right here. Wasn't too far of a walk. Did you miss me? Is your aim getting any better? I was scrolling around YouTube the other day and I saw that Gabe Kaplan, who used to play Mr. Cotter on Welcome Back Kotter, a popular sitcom here in the 1970s. I thought he wasn't even alive anymore. He recently did some stand-up, and he's hilarious. So if you search for that on YouTube, if you want a little laugh, and if that brings back some memories for you, he's still got it. Okay, so all I'm doing is using a Q-tip to wipe the surface of the CPU, and because the percentage of alcohol in this is so high, it's going to evaporate quite quickly. Depending on the environment you're in, if you're in a really humid environment or really cold environment, it may take a little bit longer for the liquid to evaporate. That's why you always want to put the cap back on the bottle. If I leave the cap off, I'm going to come back to an empty bottle after a certain amount of time passes. So it's important, not only so you don't spill it, but you don't have to replace the bottle that much sooner if you just don't. I'll get around to putting a cap on it later and it's just evaporating. It doesn't evaporate in seconds. I mean, a bottle like this might take a couple hours, but it's a good idea. Keep the cap on it. It's just safety. And then just regular old, I know there's a name for these that's not Q-tips. Cotton swabs, I don't know. They have a name. Sometimes a brand name sort of becomes the verb. I'll Google that. Xerox this for me. Well, Q-tips have become synonymous with just cotton swabs. At least in my world. I'm going to grab one of my nitrile gloves because now we're going to apply the thermal compound since this was not pre-applied on the water block. If the water block came pre-applied with thermal compound, we don't have to do this. Just leave it alone. But if it came pre-applied with thermal compound, it wouldn't have this plastic on it. It would have like a plastic cover protecting the thermal compound. we'll use the thermal compound they've included here, but I don't know how old it is. Hopefully it'll be nice and viscous, not too viscous, but you'll know. If it comes out of the tube and it's really dry and it's hard to spread, it should spread like an oil paint, an oil-based paint, like you would paint in your house or the interior, exterior paint. A little thicker, but it should be that level of viscosity. If you're moving it and it's just like rolling across the top of the CPU instead of spreading across, it's too old and you should wipe it clean again, throw that tube of thermal compound out, and use some new thermal compound. It doesn't matter who makes it. The thermal compound doesn't play a big role from brand to brand regarding how effective they are at cooling. Where thermal compounds are more expensive is in how long they stay moist before they dry out. That thermal grizzly stuff is great to spend that kind of money if you intend to keep it on for 10 years. If you think you're going to be pulling this thing apart in the next couple of years, don't waste your money on thermal grizzly. There's no thermal benefit other than the length of time it stays moist. That's it. You want to pay $15 for a $2 bottle of thermal or, you know, whatever it is, $6 for a big tube from like Nashua NH1. It's your money. Well, it's coming out of the tube here, nice and easy, and it looks like I'm going to have to use the whole tube. Well, they did not give us much. There's not much room for error if you apply it wrong and you have to reapply it. There's not enough. There's barely enough in here for one application. Certainly not for two. So if you have to reapply this thermal compound, I hope you have some thermal compound. If not, you'll want to buy some from Amazon or wherever you buy your electronics. And if you want to pay for the expensive stuff, just know you're paying for longevity, not for cooling performance. It's a big misunderstanding on the internet, along with all the other ones with fans and heat. Crazy world. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Technochondria is real, and it's costing people millions of dollars on unnecessary purchases and unnecessary mental anxieties. And we have the internet to blame for that because the people that do that are not being held accountable for the consequences. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this glove, and I need to throw it away because that stuff is really messy. So let me just step off camera one more time here. I think this should be the last time I need to do that. And we'll get this out of the way so it doesn't end up getting thermal compound all over my desk. That stuff is difficult to clean. And then we pull the tape off the bottom of this water block. Now that we're finally ready to install it, we'll just pull the tape off of here. Okay. This is the proper order of events. Remember the hoses on the picture we're showing they go down. It has no impact on how this cools. It's all about the way it looks. And how do I want to run that cable? I guess it's fine right where it is. And there is a little resistance from the hoses. That's normal. Let me move the fan cables out of the way and seat the block on top of those standoffs we screwed in earlier. And just kind of hold it flat with my hand. I don't have to put a lot of pressure. The pressure of the hoses wants to pop it off. I'm going to get these thumb screws started. Now, it may be easier if your RAM is not installed at this point or to take your RAM out while you do this part, because the screws next to the RAM, you want to be real careful that you're not going to knock your RAM loose or damage the socket by leaning up against it or hitting it with a screwdriver or whatever else could possibly happen in this step. It's a pretty easy step, and it's easier without working around the RAM. I can do it either way, but for you to decide which is your comfort level. So now that I've got them all started, now we want to start tightening down opposite corners, because we want the surface of the water block to be as level as possible, and we're never going to be able to see if it's level, except by taking it back off and checking out the thermal compound spread pattern. You know, If some of it looks like it was spread and some of it doesn't, we didn't have it level. You're going to know that if it's running hotter than it should. Maybe that you installed your cooler incorrectly. You should not use an electric driver to tighten down the cooler, a regular manual screwdriver, so that you have control over how much tension you're putting on one corner before you move to the next corner. Just give them each a couple turns, move to the next opposite corner, give it a couple turns, work your way around opposite corners, couple turns, and back over from the beginning, and keep repeating this. You don't have to necessarily count them precisely, but just try and get it in the ballpark, and you'll likely be level, and that won't be a problem you'll encounter with regards to a warped or unlevel mating of the cooler versus the top of the heatsink, the top of the CPU internal heat spreaders, what that metal plate's called on top of the CPU. And then we've got another piece of film covering up the screen on the cooler. Take that off. Now, when it comes to tightening these thumb screws, you're going to reach a point where they feel like they want to stop. Don't push them any further than that. You want them tight, but again, don't over tighten. The final step of this is we have to hook up power to the pump. If we have a pump header on the motherboard or an AIO header, that is preferred but not required. You can plug this into where it says CPU fan, but you need to go into the BIOS and tell your BIOS this is a water pump. Otherwise, it'll adjust the pump as though it were a fan, speeding it up and slowing it down. Water pumps need to run at full speed at all times. It's only the fans on the radiator that speed up or slow down. So an all-in-one pump header is labeled so because it does not vary the voltage the way it would on a fan. It keeps it on full voltage at all times. Your pump will not get louder or quieter based on how hot your computer's running. Only your radiator fans do that. So I'm going to take this pump fan power, and I'm not going to worry too much about my cable management right now. I just need to find a quick route that I can take here to the back of the board, which looks to me like right behind the big silver heat sink in the top of the center of the motherboard. I have a space in the motherboard tray there. Now I'm going to lift this up so you can see what I'm doing. So that power cable on the pump, if I move it, maybe you can see it. We're going to run that up back here. And I see all the fan headers on the back of this board. And one says pump/fan 2. That's where I'm going to plug this in the back. And that's right up nearly straight where I ran it through the back, right here, next to two other fan headers. Don't worry about the slack cable we've got now. We can pull the slack forward and we can find a routing method later when we're done that's most aesthetically pleasing, that we don't see it once the glass is on there. I mean, it may not be purely invisible. If you really look for it, you'll probably see it, but it's a black cable on top of a black motherboard. And even that preliminary routing, it's already blending in quite well. Finally, we have the fans and the RGB for those fans. And we just need to do the same thing with these cables here, is we need to route them out the back. So first we take the wire tie off, right? And then we're going to straighten these out as much as we can. They sure did give us a very long cable. That's wonderful if you're dealing with a really tall case, but it sucks if it's a shorter case and you got to figure out how to cable manage all that. At least with everything in the back, it's not going to be a problem. It's just more work than I want to do, but it's not that big a deal. Okay, I'm going to move that. Whoops. Probably shouldn't have grabbed it by the dust cover. All right, I'm going to move that one. I'm going to move that one. And we're just going to pull to take out the slack. One of these cables appears to be longer than the other. And once again, later on in the build, I can wire manage this aesthetically, but let's just make sure it works. So we've got, so I had that little dust jacket that fell off of the pins. I want to, it doesn't really matter. I just want to cover the pins up. We have an ARGB header that goes onto the motherboard. And our motherboard should provide a couple of those to us here, somewhere in the back. I see one all the way at the bottom, way down here. It's a white connector. There's probably another white one here. I'm just not seeing it. Typically a board like this will have at least, well, it should have two. It may only have the one, and it does help to know the color of the connector just so you can maybe search a little faster. We might already be plugged into it. Oh, I think we are right here. So what we can do is plug one into the other. We can plug it on the motherboard if we want, or we can plug it into the case fans and they chain together, regardless if they're made by the same manufacturer or not. ARGB is the standard. Finally, we have to give the fans power, and we can plug the fans into the CPU fan. I mean, technically these are the CPU fans, and let the BIOS raise the rate of the fans or lower the rate of the fans based on the CPU temperature, the same way they do for the CPU normal cooler. So we'll put that on the header up here that says CPU fan 1, which is right up here, right next to the block. And then there's an optional header, like if you had an air cooler and the air cooler had two fans on it, you'd use fan 1 and fan 2, not the water block one. Otherwise, one fan's going to run full speed at all times. It's probably going to drive you nuts to hear it. And then your airflow is kind of wonky. Both fans need to be controlled. You should want them controlled by the BIOS, or you can use a fan splitter so that they both spin at the same speed when you're on an air cooler. Either way works. Now, the last thing is, did I hook up any other USB? There's one USB cable, and that's going to power the screen on the block, right? We hooked up this screen with USB. Now we got to hook up that screen with USB. That's what this cable is for, except this also wants a USB 2. Wouldn't it be nice if they plugged into each other? Oh, we do have a second USB 2. Some motherboards only have one. It's kind of starting to fade, USB 2 headers. People aren't using them much these days. Thermaltake should have their own ecosystem where one Thermaltake item can plug into another, just like the RGB. It should be possible to make the cable that connects to one of the Thermaltake screen to have a female USB, unless we're going to draw too much voltage from it, in which case they both need their own independent. So maybe there's a reason for that. I don't know. But this USB cable will just fit right down here, just plugs in. There's no clips or anything. It only goes on one direction. That's pretty much the only place it's going to fit. Now, we have two USB-C cables here, and I don't know why. Maybe one of these could... Oh, maybe one of these can go to the screen, and we don't need to use the USB cable, because that's one USB port, that's another USB port. Each cable represents one USB port. There's two coming off the connector. That's why I complain about motherboards that don't give you two headers, because then where's the other one on the plug, right? I bet you we can do that. I bet you we can. I think I want to try that first, even before I've even fired this up. Yeah. Unplug it from back here. I don't even have to take the case apart. And I'll set this one over there. And I'll just grab either one of these. They're both the same. It's the U in USB stands for universal, you know. Don't you know? And I want to route it behind all these. I want to run it behind here, or do I want to run it in front? I'll run it in front for right now. I don't know yet. But I should be able to reach in here and just plug that in. It would be easier if I took it out. All right, we'll take it out right quick. It'll just take a second. It's really easy. We just take this piece off. And we're going to take this piece off. I think I can. We'll just grab that, pop it right on there. Oh no. Is it a different size? Or is it just an angle thing? Come on, Thermaltake. That does not look like USB-C. Is one of these different? Oh, I think it is. Okay, 50-50 chance. You know, my gambling, I'm always picking the wrong one, so this one must go to the block, I bet. This one will go to the extra screen. I'm just guessing. We're not looking at any documentation. Critical thinking. Situational awareness. And finally, we have the other USB cable, the one I first tried. I thought they were both the same, but I was wrong. And we need to run this cable through the back here and to the side of the block, which I'm guessing the cleanest route, because we can't go through the middle of the motherboard. That cleanest route is probably going to be maybe right about here. Again, I can clean this up later, but I'm trying to make it look as good from the front right now. I'll worry about making it look good in the back later when I have more time. And I ran that up here. Yeah, didn't I say it was over here somewhere? Yeah, it's right there. And that's a pretty, I wish that was L-shaped. It would help hide the cable. But we can get creative later to do what we can to hide that. But let's turn it all on and see if it works. It's about time. All right. Down. Stay off the furniture. Put that piece right back on there. And keyboard and a mouse. Let's get the screwdriver out of the way. I'm going to plug the keyboard up here just because we're going to test those USBs, make sure they work. I need HDMI, and we'll see if the new capture card is going to like this. This will be an interesting test. Let's go over here. We're going to plug into our internal graphics right here. And I need an Ethernet cable, an internet cable. Okay. It's a mess back here. Making a mess. Power on. System. Firing up. Fans are spinning. Screens are starting. I don't know why they're opposite. One's rotated 90 degrees left, one's rotated 90 degrees right. But that's how we have to put them in. When we load the Thermaltake software, we'll be able to put whatever picture we want, maybe some animations. And just to see what it's going to look like, just as a preview, let me grab the front panel, since that's super easy to put on here. You more or less put it mostly on. There's little slots and little tabs. The tabs fit in the slots and it pushes forward. And then these thumb screws just tighten down. Now you can hear these fans, they're running at a pretty high speed. And that likely means we need to go into the BIOS and adjust them. Also, because the pump is hooked up through USB, there'll be some software to control the fans. No, it won't control the fans. It'll tell us the temps and stuff, but the fans are plugged into the motherboard. Let's take a look if we even booted. How about that for an idea, Carey? Oh, we booted all right. Yeah, we're here. And let's go full screen over here so as I can see it. Full screen. Got to turn the mouse on, and I'd say that USB port's working. We're definitely in 4K mode here. And so what I need to do probably for these fans is let's jump in the BIOS because they're awfully loud. So we're going to restart. I'll start pressing delete. You can see we have the Elgato capture card now. And during the reboot, the fans just got really super quiet. We can also monitor what the temp is right now idle in the BIOS for the CPU. It should show us. Yeah, I mean, we're super chilly at 28C. Motherboard's only at 31C. That's really, really good. I checked the BIOS version last night. 1.6 is the latest. And then for fans, that's going to be under fan info. So CPU fan 1 CPU fan 1 and P. So that's the pump fan speed, the CPU fan. There's usually like what does this do? Okay, so we put this in PWM mode for the CPU. Socket system. CPU 1 says 0 RPM. Didn't I plug in the coolers fans to CPU 1, or did I plug them in somewhere else? Let me get my flashlight. Let me see what the back of the board says. Oh, I plugged them in the wrong one. So that's the pump. And I put the fans on system fan 1, not CPU fan 1. I got to go to the other side of the pump header. Let's plug that in. You should do that when the system's off, not the way I just did it. And it's much quieter when you plug it in the right place. That looks really happy now. And now it should tell us our CPU fan speed up here, which it now does, our pump speed. That should be pretty much the same at around 3300 at all times. And then we've got something plugged in system fan 2, which is one of the, probably the two front fans or the rear fan, I'm guessing. We can leave this set to auto. These are PWM or 4-pin fans. DC fans are 3-pin fans or 2-pin fans. This is your fan curve, which is set to a smart fan mode, but you can prioritize being high performance, full speed, right, would be high performance. Ultra quiet, which means the CPU will run a little hotter, but the fans will be much, much quieter. To your preference, or you just leave everything set to auto, and it should auto detect and everything should be happy here. So I did not need to go into the BIOS if I had plugged into the right fan header, and that only matters on the pump and the CPU fan. Let's see how fast our boot time is on this bad boy. But do it live, see what happens. We're just after 4 o'clock. That means we've just gone over 3 hours today. Time flies when you're having funs. Project 0 loading. Toilet bowl is flushing, as you see the flush going around and around. And finally, eventually, there it is, the desktop. Once again, our system specifications, right-click on the Start menu and go to System. And there you have it. 14900, 32 gigs of RAM. Windows 11 Pro. 23H2? Where's 24H2? What the heck? All right. Well, I guess it's time to hit Windows Update, see if it offers us 24H2. That was weird. I guess it was been a while since I initially put Windows on this motherboard back at Studio B. 24H2 wasn't out yet, I guess. What can you do? I bet you it's going to offer us 24H2 now. Maybe. Come on, 24H2. Snake Eyes. Oh, playing a different game. It's not offered yet. What the heck? How about now? Doesn't like me? Well, that is something. All right, well, we're going to do a forced install. Just as a reminder how we do that, we're just going to type in download Windows 11. First link that comes up is from Microsoft, and we're going to choose the Windows Installation Media Assistant, which we'll download now, which is up here. Open the file, click yes, and getting a few things ready. Could take a minute. Agree to the license agreement as though you had a choice. Still getting a few things ready. Select language and edition. What? Why are we on Windows 11 setup? Did I download the wrong thing? This doesn't look right. Let me close this. Boy, 4K is really hard to read. Wow, everything's super tiny. I want the installation assistant, not the installation media. I don't know. Did I download something different? You guys probably see it better than I can. That's all right. That looks better. It needs the PC health check. Yes, that's what I want. Not interested in this. I don't know why that opened. Close that again. Come over here to our downloads. Downloads. Oh, that text is so teeny tiny. PC health check. Agree. Pretend like you have a choice. Finish. It's going to tell us everything's happy. Check now. See all results. Yeah, it's good to go. Good, good, good. Close. 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 Refresh. And I hit decline. See, you have a choice. You'll have this or have nothing. One more time. Yes. I'll accept it. That's it. Now it's rolling. Okay, that's it for today. Let me jump back to the chat room one more time and thank you all for joining me today. Thank you for being members. We will download, by we I mean me, the Thermaltake software from the Thermaltake website that will control these screens. And I'm going to have them both show the same thing. I just want this to be an easier to read representation of what's already there. And we'll rotate them 90 degrees, one to the right, one to the left, and that'll be perfect. That means when you turn the computer on initially, those screens will be sideways, and as soon as Windows loads, it'll bring the Thermaltake software in and immediately adjust them. Then I can also run Cinebench and see what our max temps are. But this is way more of a cooler, way more efficient of a cooler than the original air cooler we had. So unless I installed it wrong, it should only be, at the worst, as good as what we had, and likely far better in cooling under high resource-intensive tasks, like Cinebench. And I got to remember not to put stuff on top of this computer, or I'm going to block the airflow, and it's going to cause a heat problem on the CPU. Phil Stodd says, since my IoT network was being so obstinate with me, I decided to name it with a prefix of ID. Nod, nod, wink, wink. ID 10T. Dustin Fuller says, great stream as always, Carey and Mara, and in 4K. You can see my mistakes and wrinkles in 100% Ultra HD 4K high-res definition. Is anything in my teeth? You could probably see it better than me. All right. But they're in my mouth, so that is some high definition, is all I'm saying. Can you taste my breath? You don't want that high a definition. As a reminder, all the parts used in today's build are in the video notes. Please read our video descriptions as they answer most of the questions that are being asked by most new viewers who are new here. Video descriptions are a very important part of a content creator, and if you're not clicking on those from other channels and other creators, you are probably missing out on information you want to know. We also have links to our friends for SCD keys if you need to buy a Windows or Office key. You can save a lot of money. They're fully legal and legit and guaranteed. There's there with support that they have. There's also 30% off with our coupon code. 30% off RoboForm, the best password manager that exists. That's why I use it. I've been using it for about 20 years. If it's not 20 years, it's really close. You know why I use it? Because it's the best one I've ever used. 30% off for all new users, and there's a free version that has some limitation, but check it out and decide for yourself. It has a free trial. Our friends at Acronis, that's the software I use for backing up and cloning computers. 30% off for all of you. Use our coupon code in the video notes. Thanks to all of our members. Thank you, of course, to Mark Gaines and to Charlie Purdy for your Amazon gift cards. Thank you to our super members, Buster, also known as Peter Laycock, Oystein, Frankie B, Paul Gray. You guys are amazing. Thank you so, so much. Thank you to all the members and all the viewers for hanging out with us today in the chat room. Without you, this build, all of us in this community, this build is for the community, by the community, and I'm so glad to be able to share my passion, that we share this passion together, and to experiment with the different hardware that's out there and determine what I like or don't like about it, and if it's a good value or not, and what makes it different, and whether or not that difference is important to you is for you to decide. But we share the experience together in real time, and we interact with one another. Not too many channels do all of that. Want to check one more time if I missed anything here. Probably helps if I bring up my email. Nothing appears new in here, so if anything has come in, I apologize. I haven't seen it yet, but I want to thank all of the super chats that came in during the show today. And I mentioned Mara. She's doing all of the background tasks during the show that I would have to do after the show. And that's why it was very difficult for me to keep up with the number of comments and questions I get. Now I've assigned, or Mara has volunteered for, taking on all of the administrative role of the channel. You think making videos is challenging, you should try the administrative side. Likewise, I like fixing computers, but I don't like writing and mailing the bills. I like to get paid, but I just don't enjoy that. So guess what? Mara does that now. I get to enjoy the work. She gets to enjoy the paperwork. To each their own. She likes that. She likes the spreadsheets and billing software. Yin and yang. That's why we go together so well. Peanut butter jelly. All right. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. Am I live tomorrow? Gosh, I have so much to do. I better be. You know what? We'll be live tomorrow. Heck with it. Friday, we'll get back to the Asus ProArt Z890, which I hope is the last part of the build, where we put the motherboard that we've spent 2 videos configuring with RAID 0 and all this other stuff. We've got the liquid cooler on it already. I'm going to need Mitch's help to lift that ProArt case. It's big and heavy. No RGB. 100% pure performance workstation, baby. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then I'll need his help for sure when you combine the weight of the motherboard and the weight of the cooler to the already heavy case. We'll see if Mitch has got the strength. We'll make sure he gets some spinach or Wheaties that day, and together we will move it and get it off the counter when we're done. And that's going to be Mara's new workstation. The one we were building for her still sits here waiting for cable management, but it's otherwise done. And I'm not quite sure where that one's going to go, but we're going to try and use these in production. I would love to use this in production. This is a very good machine. It's attractive and it performs. And I'm just not quite sure where. If you live in the Phoenix area or you're going to be traveling through the Phoenix area, the things we build are available for sale at discounted prices, but we're not mailing anything. The cost of shipping and the chances of damage way too high now. Not to mention, it's impossible to give the level of support that I expect of myself when people are so far away. That being said, it may be a project that ends up sitting around here for a few years that we use in demonstration videos for like how to network, or, you know, with a Cronus or some other software that we want to demo. It's great to have spare machines for that. Although in many cases a mini PC does the job, this is way prettier to look at in most of them, you know, compared to most of them. So it's a little over the top build, but still reasonably affordable for what you got here. This looks like $1 million, but it only costs, I don't know. I think we're well under $1,000 on this build. I think we're around $800, give or take. I mean, for $800, that's a really nice system. And the bulk of it is the CPU and the motherboard. That's probably $600. Hold on, I got to redo my math. And the cooler and that little LCD screen, that's another $200. The case is $120. All right, it looks like a $1,000 build with the storage and the RAM. $1,000. But that easily would sell at a gaming store for $1,600 or more, because people don't know what they're buying. And you throw any graphics card you want in this, anything you want, it'll fit in there. So if you want to turn this into an outrageous gaming build, just open your wallet, show me the money. Actually, don't show me the money. I don't want to sell you a graphics card. You could go buy your graphics card wherever you want, any one you want, NVIDIA, Intel, AMD, pop it in there. Your power supply is plenty powerful for that. Have at it. You'll double the price of the computer for that GPU, but hey, you can get away with a $200 Intel ARGB 580 and do 1440p AAA gaming all day. And if none of that made any sense to you and it was all a different language, keep your money in your wallet, right? The benefit for you is if you don't know what any of that means, that's all money that you don't spend on stuff because you don't need it. But for the rest of us, you can make this a $3,000 gaming rig. You can make this a $1,200 gaming rig, right? Depending on the kind of gaming and the kind of budget you have. That's all it's missing for that. In the meantime, to do literally everything else, the onboard GPU is there. We can do video rendering. We can play a lot of basic games or older esports games, older titles, World of Warcraft, League of Legends. That's all fine. That's easy. But it's the modern AAA titles, those games that are $60 right now, brand new. You're gonna need a higher end video card if you wanna play them with high frame rates and high resolutions. And the only thing holding you back from that is a graphics card. So with or without, your choice, right? You want cheese on that? Add the cheese. It's already American cheese yellow. Orange? That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll join us tomorrow, 1 o'clock p.m. Arizona time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. I don't know if that's East or not, but it's 3 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, bye for now.